Hey everyone. Welcome back for the second part of The Founding Fathers. As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. As always, the full story is already out over there for you guys along with about 50 other different stories you can enjoy. Also feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Chapter 6, The Land of Mist and Sorrows. The desert released its grip on Naruto slowly, reluctantly. The endless sea of sand gave way to rocky badlands, then to sparse, hardy grasslands that clung to life with a stubborn tenacity. Leaving the land of wind felt like waking from a fever dream. The oppressive heat was replaced by a gentler warmth, and the whispering silence of the dunes was supplanted by the chirping of insects and the rustle of the wind through the tall grass. He didn't look back. There was no need. With his sage senses, he could feel the subtle but profound shift in the chakra of the sand village, miles behind him. The chaotic, screaming energy of Shukaku had settled, its jagged edges smoothed into something less like a raging inferno and more like a wary, slumbering volcano. The fragile harmony he had brokered with Bunpaku was holding. It was a single, flickering candle in a vast darkness, but it was lit. You have given them a weapon far greater than they realize, Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind as they walked. A stable Jinchuriki, a Baijuu whose will is not actively trying to kill its host. The kage is a fool if he believes he can control it, but he is a pragmatist. He will see the value in this new cooperation. The sand will become a power to be reckoned with. That's the point, Naruto replied, his gaze fixed on the eastern horizon. They can't be a partner in peace if they're constantly on the verge of being wiped out. I balanced the scales. A little. You have kicked the hornet's nest, Kurama corrected. The other great clans will hear of this. A perfect Jinchuriki in the land of wind. They will either seek to emulate it or destroy it. You have not brought peace, Kit. You have merely changed the nature of the war. One step at a time, Kurama, Naruto sighed. He knew the fox was right. Peace wasn't a destination, it was a constant, grueling process. He had just finished one small, exhausting battle, and now he had to prepare for the next. His journey took him eastward, through a patchwork of smaller, unnamed lands caught between the spheres of influence of the great clans. These were the lands that truly suffered from the endless warfare. He saw villages that paid tribute to 3 different warlords just to avoid being burned to the ground. He saw fields fallow and salted, not by nature, but by retreating armies. He saw children with old, haunted eyes, who knew how to identify a shinobi by the crest on their armor and knew to run and hide when they saw one. Naruto moved through these lands like a ghost. He kept his power hidden, his presence muted. He was just another traveler, another refugee fleeing the violence. But he couldn't stop himself from helping where he could. He would use his sage-enhanced strength to help a farmer clear a field of boulders, or use his knowledge to find a hidden spring for a drought-stricken village. He would share his meager food supplies with hungry children, telling them stories of a peaceful village hidden in the leaves to distract them from their empty stomachs. He never stayed long, never accepted payment, and never gave his real name. He was a ripple in the water, a brief moment of impossible kindness in a world that had forgotten the meaning of the word. It took him the better part of a year, moving at a wanderer's pace, to finally reach the coast. The first time he saw the ocean, it took his breath away. It was a vast, churning expanse of gray-green water under a perpetually overcast sky. The air was cool and heavy with the taste of salt and mist. After years in the desert, the sheer, overwhelming presence of so much water felt alien. This was the gateway to the land of water. It wasn't a unified country like the land of fire. It was an archipelago, a collection of mist-shrouded islands separated by treacherous currents and plagued by a deep-seated paranoia. To get there, he needed a boat. He found passage in a bustling port town, a haven for smugglers, mercenaries, and shinobi on clandestine missions. He signed on as a deckhand on a rickety merchant vessel heading for the main island cluster. The captain was a grizzled man with a face like a barnacle and a distrust for anyone who didn't reek of salt and fish. "You got sea legs, land dweller?" The captain had growled, looking at Naruto's simple robes. "I'm a fast learner," Naruto had replied with a grin. The journey was rough. The seas were choppy, and a thick, unnatural mist clung to them day and night, reducing visibility to near zero. The sailors were a superstitious lot, whispering tales of ghost ships and sea monsters. But Naruto knew this was no natural fog. It was saturated with chakra. It was a defensive veil, designed to confuse and repel outsiders. "The chakra here is cold," Kurama noted, his mental voice laced with a faint unease. "It feels Damp. Rotten. Not like the dry heat of the sand or the vibrant life of the fire country. This place is sick. Naruto agreed. He could feel it in the natural energy. It was sluggish, sorrowful, tainted by generations of bloody conflict. When they finally docked at the main port of the Land of Water, a town called Takigakure, the village hidden in the mist, a name it had not yet officially earned but was already fitting, the feeling intensified. The village was a fortress built on a series of interconnected islands, linked by high, arching bridges that were constantly shrouded in the thick mist. The buildings were made of dark, moss-covered stone, and seemed to weep with a perpetual dampness. The people were cold and insular, their eyes filled with a deep, pervasive suspicion. If Sonogakure was a village built on survival, Kirigakure was a village built on mistrust. Naruto found work on the docks, hauling crates of fish and cargo, his blonde hair and blue eyes marking him as a clear outsider. He drew constant, hostile stares. Fights in the dockside taverns were common, brutal affairs where blood feuds between the local clans would erupt over a spilled drink. He saw firsthand the source of the island's sickness, the obsession with bloodlines. The clans here didn't fight for territory, they fought for purity and dominance. The Kaguya, with their savage bone manipulation, the Hozuki, with their ability to turn to water, and a dozen other smaller clans with unique and powerful Kage Genkai were locked in a constant, clandestine war of assassination and sabotage. Anyone without a bloodline was considered second class. Anyone from the outside was considered less than nothing. It was in this cold, hostile environment that Naruto began his search. He would meditate for hours in his small, damp room at the inn, extending his senses, sifting through the layers of mist and paranoia. He wasn't looking for a prison this time. He was looking for a ghost. A wild, untamed chakra signature. And then he found it. It wasn't a raging tempest like Shukaku. It was a deep, resonant thrum of sorrow. A chakra signature that felt like a bottomless well of grief, passive and weeping, moving slowly in the deep, dark waters of a massive inland lake on the largest island. It was the chakra of Isobu, the three tails. And it was alone. There, Kurama's voice was a low growl. My brother. He is not raging. He is weeping. The humans have not caged him yet, but their constant fighting, their hatred. It poisons the very water he swims in. He feels their sorrow, and it becomes his own. A new, urgent purpose settled over Naruto. Shukaku was a Baijuu that needed to be tamed. Isobu was one that needed to be protected. His newfound mission was given a dangerous timeline when he overheard a group of shinobi in a dockside tavern. They were Kaguya clan members, their bodies covered in brutish tattoos, their voices loud and arrogant. The Hozuki fools think they can tame the beast with their water tricks, one of them sneered. The Three Tails is a creature of pure power. It will not be captured by mist and bubbles. It must be broken. Subdued. Our clan's Shikatsumyaku will shatter its shell and bend it to our will. The elders have given the order, another added, his voice lower. The great hunt begins on the next full moon. We will corner the beast in the Lake of Sorrows. This time, we will not fail. The Kaguya clan will possess the power of a Baijuu, and this wretched land will finally have a true ruler. Naruto's blood ran cold. A great hunt. They were treating a thinking, feeling being like a prize animal to be captured for glory. He had less than a month. He had to get to Isobu first. He had to warn him, to help him, to get him away before the clans could spring their trap. Leaving the village was easy. He simply walked away from his dockhand job, another piece of foreign driftwood washed away by the tide. He traveled inland, following the faint, weeping trail of Isobu's chakra. The journey took him through oppressive, ancient forests where the trees grew so close together the mist never burned away, even at midday. The land was beautiful, but it was a suffocating, sorrowful beauty. He finally arrived at the shores of the Lake of Sorrows. It was immense, its waters a dark, placid mirror reflecting the perpetually gray sky. A thick mist rose from its surface, clinging to the ancient, gnarled trees that lined its banks. The place felt heavy with a sadness that went beyond just Isobu's presence. It was a place where countless battles had been fought, a place that had drunk its fill of blood and tears. He is at the bottom, Kurama confirmed. In the deepest trench. He is hiding. Naruto knew he couldn't just dive in. A sudden, powerful chakra signature entering the lake would be seen as a threat, and Isobu would flee or lash out. He had to use a gentler approach. He sat on the shore, closed his eyes, and entered sage mode. He didn't try to communicate directly. Instead, he simply let his own chakra seep into the water, a warm, gentle current infused with the calm of natural energy and the quiet empathy he felt. It was a silent, non-threatening greeting. I am here. I am like you. I am a friend. He sat there for a full day, an unmoving statue of patience. He felt the subtle shifts in the lake's energy. He felt the curiosity of the fish, the slow life of the aquatic plants. And slowly, cautiously, he felt a massive, ancient consciousness begin to stir in the depths. A single, huge, red eye opened in the dark water, its gaze fixed on the warm, strange chakra signature on the shore. Finally, as dusk began to settle, Naruto waded into the cool, clear water. He walked until he was waist deep, the mist swirling around him. "Isobu," he called out, his voice soft, carried by the water. "I know you're in there. I know you can hear me. My name is Naruto. I've come a long way to find you." The water in front of him began to churn. The surface broke, and a massive, shelled head, like that of a great turtle but with the mournful eyes of a whale, emerged from the depths. It was Isobu, the Three Tails. He was larger than the Gamabunta, his gray, armored skin covered in coral and seaweed. He looked at Naruto, not with rage, but with a deep, cautious, and profound sadness. From the depths of the beast's soul, a voice, ancient and filled with a grief as deep as the ocean itself, echoed in Naruto's mind. "Why?" The voice whispered, a sound like water flowing over ancient stones. "Why have you come? The little ones with the bones and the ones who become water. They are coming soon. They always do. They come to hurt me. Have you come to hurt me, too?" Naruto smiled, a small, sad smile. It was worse than he thought. Isobu was so used to being attacked that he simply accepted it as his fate. "No," Naruto replied, his own voice echoing in the silent clearing. "I'm not here to hurt you." He gestured back towards the shore. "And they're not going to hurt you either. Not this time." As he spoke, he could feel it. Dozens of chakra signatures, moving fast, converging on the lake from all sides. The Kaguya. The Hozuki. The great hunt had begun ahead of schedule. Isobu let out a low, sorrowful moan, his great eye looking at the approaching shinobi. "You see? They are here. It is time for the pain to begin again." "Not tonight," Naruto said, his smile vanishing, replaced by a look of hard, unshakable resolve. He turned to face the approaching clans. "Tonight, the hunt is over. The unsung protector." The mist clinging to the lake of sorrow seemed to thicken, muffling the world in a gray shroud. From the ancient, weeping trees that lined the shore, figures began to emerge. They moved with the predatory confidence of apex predators entering their hunting grounds. To the west, the Kaguya clan, their bodies adorned with brutish tattoos, their eyes burning with a savage lust for battle. Their leader was a giant of a man with bone-white hair and a jawline that looked like it had been carved from granite. Protruding from his shoulders and arms were sharpened spurs of solid bone, a testament to his mastery over his clan's terrifying kage genkai. To the east, the Hozuki clan materialized from the mist itself, their forms coalescing from the damp air. They were led by a man with sharp, intelligent eyes and a perpetually smug grin, his blue-tinged hair marking him as a high-ranking member of his clan. They moved with a fluid grace, their feet barely disturbing the wet leaves on the ground. The two clans stopped at opposite ends of the shore, their leaders' eyes locking for a moment in a display of pure, undiluted animosity. They were rivals before they were allies, their temporary truce as thin as the mist around them. Then, their collective gaze fell upon the two figures in the center of the lake, the colossal, shelled form of Isobu, and the lone, blonde-haired man standing before it as if shielding it with his own body. Well, the Hozuki leader said, his voice smooth and mocking. "It seems a lost lamb has stumbled into the slaughterhouse. I am Mangetsu Hozuki. State your name and purpose, outsider, before we wash you away with the rest of the refuse. Save your breath, Mangetsu." The Kaguya leader roared, his voice like grinding stones. He slammed a bone-clad fist into his palm, the sound a sharp crack that echoed across the water. "I am Ganko Kaguya. This beast is the prize of the Kaguya clan. This whelp is merely a morsel to be crushed beneath our heel. Stand aside, boy, and we may grant you a quick death." Isobu let out another low, mournful sound, his great red eye filled with a familiar despair. He began to sink back into the water, resigned to his fate. "It is as I said," the Baiju's voice whispered in Naruto's mind. "The pain always begins again." "Not this time," Naruto projected back, his own voice a pillar of unshakable calm. He turned his head slightly, his gaze meeting Isobu's. "Stay. Watch. I'll handle this." He faced the assembled shinobi, his hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed. "My name is Naruto," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the water. "And Isobu is my friend. The Great Hunt, or whatever you want to call it, is cancelled. Permanently. I suggest you all turn around and go home." The sheer audacity of the statement was met with a moment of stunned silence, which was quickly broken by a wave of derisive laughter from the Kaguya clan. "Friend?" Ganko bellowed. "You are friends with a mindless beast? The boy is an idiot. Kill him and take the prize." With a savage roar, Ganko launched himself forward. He leapt high into the air, his arms morphing and extending into long, vicious spears of solid bone. "Dance of the Clematis, Vine!" he screamed, plunging towards Isobu, aiming to pierce the Baiju's tough, shelled hide. Predictable, Kurama sneered in Naruto's mind. Cornered dogs always bare their teeth. Naruto didn't move. He simply raised one hand, weaving a single, complex hand sign. Uzumaki art, adamantine sealing barrier. Just as Ganko's bone spears were about to strike, a shimmering, golden barrier of chakra erupted from the surface of the lake. It looked like a translucent dome, covered in the intricate, swirling script of Uzumaki Fuinjutsu. Ganko's attack slammed into the barrier with the force of a meteor. There was a deafening crack. But it was not the barrier that broke. It was Ganko's bone spears. They shattered against the golden wall, the force of the impact sending him tumbling back into the water with a howl of pain frustration. The laughter died. Every shinobi stared at the glowing, unbreakable barrier, then at the man who had created it with a single sign. Mangetsu Hozuki's smug grin faltered, replaced by a look of sharp, calculating curiosity. "Uzumaki, you say? A clan of seal masters, far from your home in the whirlpools. Interesting." He made a series of fluid hand signs. "A barrier is impressive. But you are standing in my clan's domain. Let us see how your seals fare against the entire lake. Water style, great water prison shark dance." The very lake began to churn. The water around Naruto roiled and rose, forming into a dozen massive sharks made of compressed water. They circled him and Isobu, their jaws gaping, before lunging all at once. Isobu cried out, coiling in on himself, expecting the tearing, crushing pain he had known so many times before. But Naruto just smiled. "My friend, you seem to be mistaken," he said calmly. "You don't command this domain." "I do." He slammed his open palm onto the surface of the water. He didn't use a jutsu. He simply poured his own massive, sage-infused chakra into the lake, hijacking the element itself. The water sharks that Mangetsu had created suddenly stopped, their forms wavering. Then, their heads turned. Their watery eyes, which had been fixed on Naruto and Isobu, now locked onto the stunned Hozuki clansman. "What is this sorcery?" Mangetsu gasped, his control over his jutsu completely severed. With a silent, unified command from Naruto, the water sharks turned on their former masters. The Hozuki, panicking, dissolved into their liquid forms to escape, but the sharks, made of the same element, simply merged with them, trapping them in swirling vortexes of their own jutsu. In less than a minute, the battle was over before it had even truly begun. The Kaguya were nursing their leader's shattered pride, and the Hozuki were trapped, sputtering and helpless, within their own techniques. Naruto stood on the water, the golden barrier fading behind him. He looked from one defeated clan to the other. "I said the hunt was over." Ganko Kaguya, his face purple with rage, staggered to his feet. "This is not over. We may not be able to break your tricks, but we will subdue the beast together. Attack the Three Tails." Mangetsu, having reformed, nodded in agreement. He cannot protect it from all sides at once. All forces, converge on the Baiju'u. The two clans, their rivalry momentarily forgotten in their shared humiliation, surged forward, a wave of savage bone and flowing water aimed directly at the cowering Isobu. Isobu shut his eye, bracing for the inevitable. But the pain never came. Instead, a light erupted from Naruto's position. It was a blinding, brilliant, golden light that banished the mist and outshone the moon. A torrent of pure, overwhelming chakra washed over the entire lake, a tidal wave of sheer, unrestrained power that was so immense it felt like the world itself was bowing before it. Naruto stood in the center of it all, no longer just a man, but a blazing, golden sun. He was cloaked in the Nine Tails chakra mode, the intricate black markings of the Sage of Six Paths swirling across his form. The air crackled with an energy that was both terrifying and life-affirming. "I told you," his voice boomed, echoing with the power of two ancient beings, "to leave. My friend. Alone." He raised a hand, and from the golden energy, a colossal chakra arm, larger than Isobu himself, materialized. It didn't strike. It didn't smash. It simply swept across the lake in a single, fluid motion. It was not an attack, it was a dismissal. The sheer force of the chakra wave it created was like a tsunami. The Kaguya and Hozuki shinobi were lifted off their feet, their jutsu extinguished, their formations shattered, and they were thrown unceremoniously back into the forest, landing in a heap of tangled limbs and broken pride, battered but, for the most part, alive. Silence descended once more upon the Lake of Sorrows. The golden light faded, leaving Naruto standing calmly on the water's surface. He turned to face Isobu, who was now staring at him, its great red eye wide with an emotion it hadn't felt in centuries. "Ah. You protected me," Isobu whispered, his mental voice trembling. "That's what friends do," Naruto said with a soft smile. He walked across the water and placed a hand gently on Isobu's massive, shelled forehead. "They're gone. They won't be back tonight. But they will return," Isobu said, a note of his old sorrow creeping back in. "They always do." "Yes, they will," Naruto agreed. "Which is why you can't just hide at the bottom of this lake anymore. You can't let them dictate the terms of your life. You have to protect yourself." "I do not like to fight," Isobu confessed. "I am not like my brothers. Their rage. It is not my way." "I know," Naruto said. "So don't fight. Deceive. Confuse. You are a master of water, and the mist is your ally." He closed his eyes, focusing. "Your chakra. It has an unusual property. It can create illusions, a genjutsu-type mist. You've probably been doing it subconsciously for years, which is why this place is so confusing to outsiders." He opened his eyes. "Embrace it. Master it. Turn this whole lake, this whole forest, into your sanctuary. Create a mist so powerful that anyone who enters becomes lost in their own fears and doubts. Make them run from shadows of their own making. You don't have to be a monster that fights, Isobu. You can be a ghost that hides. Protect your home. Protect your peace." He was giving Isobu not just a strategy, but an identity, one that fit his gentle, timid nature. Isobu was silent for a long time, considering the words. Finally, a slow, deep sense of understanding and gratitude flowed from him. "A ghost. I think I can do that. Thank you. Naruto." Naruto nodded, stepping back. "I have to go now. But I want you to know you're not alone. There are others like us. And one day, I promise, we will all be together again, like the old man told us we would be." He turned and walked back towards the shore, leaving the three tails floating in the calm, quiet water. As he reached the tree line, he looked back. A thick, swirling mist, far denser and more potent than before, was beginning to rise from the lake, blanketing it in an impenetrable, illusory shroud. Isobu was already practicing. Naruto smiled. He had not just saved a Baijuo. He had empowered one. As he journeyed away from the land of water, his mind was already on the next step. The land of earth. A place of stubborn pride and unyielding will. A place where two of his siblings, the proud Son Goku and the whimsical Kokuo, were said to roam free. "The monkey and the dolphin horse," Kurama grumbled. "Son Goku is even more prideful than I am, and Kokuo is insufferably aloof. This next conversation will not be as easy as talking to a weeping turtle." "Probably not," Naruto admitted, a grin touching his face as he looked towards the towering mountains in the distance. "But it'll definitely be more interesting. The mountain where the Monkey King sleeps." Leaving the land of water felt like surfacing from a deep, cold ocean. The oppressive, sorrowful mist gave way to clean air and open skies, and Naruto felt a weight lift from his spirit. He had left Isobu with a new sense of purpose, a way to protect its gentle soul in a world that only valued strength. It was a victory, but a quiet, solitary one. The path ahead was long, and his next destination promised a challenge of a completely different nature. His journey took him across the sea once more, and then inland, towards the formidable, spine-like mountain ranges that define the land of earth. This was a land of stone and stubbornness, a place where life was carved from the rock itself through sheer force of will. The forests were thick with ancient, powerful trees, and the rivers cut deep, impassable canyons through the landscape. The people here were much like their land, hardy, unyielding, and deeply proud. "You are heading into the hornet's nest now, Kit," Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind as they trekked through a high mountain pass. "The shinobi of this land, the ones who will one day form Iwagakure, are masters of earth style. They see the world in terms of geological time. They are patient, stubborn, and they do not suffer outsiders gladly." "I'm not here for them," Naruto replied, adjusting the simple traveler's pack on his shoulders. "I'm here for your brother." "Brothers," Kurama corrected. "Two of them make their home in these desolate peaks. Son Goku and Kokuo. The 4 tails and the 5 tails. Do not think for a moment they will be like Isobu." The turtle was timid and sorrowful. "These two. They are forces of pure, untamed pride." "So, no talking about feelings, then," Naruto noted with a wry grin. Son Goku, the monkey, detests humans with a passion that rivals my own former hatred, Kurama explained. He sees all of you as arrogant, deceitful creatures who seek only to enslave beings greater than yourselves. He calls himself the great sage equaling heaven, and his pride is as immense as his power. He will not listen to pleas for friendship. And Kokuo? The dolphin horse is different, Kurama said, a note of complexity in his voice. Aloof. Detached. It values its freedom above all else, and wanders the high plains, caring little for the squabbles of man or Baijuo. It may simply ignore you entirely, which might be an even greater challenge than Son Goku's rage. For several months, Naruto traveled through the land of Earth, gathering information. He worked in small mining outposts and traded stories with merchants in fortified mountain towns. He learned that the local shinobi clans, while constantly warring with each other, shared a common reverence and terror for the legendary beasts of their lands. They didn't speak of them as Baijuo. They called them the Kazan no O, the kings of the volcanoes. They were treated not as weapons to be captured, but as sentient natural disasters. One legend spoke of a great red ape that slumbered deep within a volcanic mountain range known as the Furnace of the Gods. The clans had long ago given up on trying to defeat it. Its lava-style jutsu was too powerful, its taijutsu too destructive. Instead, they had sealed the main entrances to its domain with generations of powerful earth-style jutsu, creating a permanent quarantine zone. Their strategy was not containment, it was avoidance. They hoped to let the beast sleep for eternity. Naruto knew this was Son Goku. A direct approach was impossible. Attempting to break the seals would bring every shinobi in the region down upon him. He needed to find another way in, a secret path that the world had forgotten. He spent weeks trekking through the foothills of the Furnace of the Gods, a jagged, intimidating range of active volcanoes that spewed black smoke into the sky. He used his sage mode, not to find a person, but to feel the flow of the earth itself. He searched for a disruption in the natural energy, a place where the mountain's chakra felt different, a hidden artery that led to its heart. He finally found it. It wasn't a cave or a tunnel, but a massive, ancient petrified tree, its stone-like roots delving deep into the base of the main volcano. It felt ancient, far older than the surrounding forest, and its roots pulsed with a faint, warm current of natural energy. It was a secret path, one that nature had made long before man had come to seal the front door. Following the root system, he discovered a narrow fissure hidden behind a waterfall of steaming, mineral-rich water. He slipped inside, entering a network of natural lava tubes. The heat was immense, the air thick with the smell of sulfur and brimstone. Strange, glowing crystals lined the walls, casting an eerie, orange light on the path ahead. After what felt like hours of navigating the sweltering, claustrophobic tunnels, he emerged into a space that took his breath away. He was in a colossal cavern, a vast subterranean world at the heart of the volcano. Rivers of glowing magma flowed like water, pooling into a great, fiery lake in the center. The ceiling was a dome of obsidian, reflecting the fiery light, making it seem as though he were standing under a sky of captive stars. And in the very center of the cavern, on a massive, throne-like formation of black rock, sat the source of the overwhelming power he had been tracking. It was a gigantic, crimson-furred ape, easily the size of Gamabunta, with 4 long, powerful tails swishing lazily behind it. Its face was a blend of simian intelligence and demonic fury, with 2 long horns curving up from its brow. It was Son Goku. And he was awake. The moment Naruto stepped into the cavern, the Baiju's eyes snapped open. They were molten gold, burning with an ancient, arrogant intelligence. So, a voice boomed, echoing through the cavern, a sound like an avalanche mixed with a king's decree. Another wretched human has managed to scurry its way into my sanctum. Have you come to beg for a quick death, or are you foolish enough to believe you can chain the king of the sages? Naruto stood his ground, meeting the Baiju's immense gaze without flinching. Neither, he called out, his voice clear and steady. I've come to talk, Son Goku. The use of his proper name gave the great ape a moment's pause. Its eyes narrowed. You know my name. Most of your kind just squeal 4 tails before I turn them to ash. You are either very brave, or very stupid. A little of both, maybe, Naruto admitted with a slight grin. I'm Naruto. I'm a friend of Kurama. Son Goku let out a roar of derisive laughter that shook the very cavern, causing stalactites to rain from the ceiling. Kurama. That arrogant fox. The sage's favorite pet. You are his Jinchuriki, then? His jailer? Even better. I will crush you, and in doing so, I will send a message to that 9-tailed egomaniac. Before Naruto could reply, Son Goku moved. He didn't charge blindly. He brought his hands together in a sign, and the magma lake erupted. Lava style, scorching rocks jutsu. Dozens of massive globes of molten rock shot towards Naruto like meteors. Naruto reacted instantly, his body a blur of motion as he leapt from rock to rock, dodging the fiery projectiles that exploded around him with concussive force. "You're just proving my point," Naruto yelled as he dodged. "You hate humans because they try to control you, but you're doing the exact same thing. You're not even listening. I have listened to human lies for centuries." Son Goku roared, leaping from his throne and charging forward, his massive fists wreathed in lava. "Your words are meaningless. All that matters is power." He threw a punch, a blow that could shatter a mountain. Naruto, seeing the direct assault, didn't try to block. He used his speed, dropping low and sliding under the attack, the heat from the lava fist singeing his hair. He came up behind the Baijiu and slapped a simple, blank sealing tag onto its ankle. Son Goku paused, looking down at the small piece of paper. "A seal? Do you take me for a fool? Your pathetic human tricks are useless against me." He tried to move, but found his leg frozen in place. The tag, infused with Naruto's sage-powered chakra, had anchored him to the spot. "I'm not trying to seal you," Naruto said, creating distance between them. "I'm trying to get you to stand still for 5 minutes and have a civil conversation. Is that so much to ask?" Son Goku roared in frustration and tore the tag off with a burst of chakra, but the brief pause was all Naruto needed. He wasn't trying to win a fight. He was trying to start a dialogue. "You value pride and freedom, right?" Naruto asked. "You hate being controlled, being looked down on." "I am Son Goku." The Baijiu bellowed. "I bow to no one. Especially not a human." "I get that," Naruto said, and the sincerity in his voice cut through the ape's rage. "Believe me, I do. Humans can be greedy, and fearful, and they do stupid, hateful things when they're scared of a power they don't understand." Son Goku stopped, his head cocked, surprised by the admission. "You agree?" "Of course I agree," Naruto said. "I've been on the receiving end of that fear my whole life." He took a deep breath. "You hate Jinchuriki, right? You see them as the ultimate symbol of your enslavement. Well, you're looking at one." He flared his chakra, activating his Nine Tails chakra mode. The golden light filled the cavern, its warm, vibrant energy a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the magma. Son Goku took an involuntary step back, his eyes wide. He saw the symbiotic flow of power, the perfect harmony between the human and the Baijiu chakra. He saw Naruto wearing Kurama's power not as a weapon, but as a second skin. "Kurama is not my slave," Naruto stated, his voice echoing with power. "He is my partner. I am not his jailer. We work together. Because we choose to. Because we are friends." He let the cloak fade, the sudden quiet emphasizing his next words. "I came here to offer you the same thing. A choice. I'm not here to seal you or fight you. I came to tell you that there's a third option besides being a wild beast hunted by humans, or a slave chained inside one. There's the option of being a friend." Son Goku stared at him, his proud, ancient mind struggling to process the concept. He had seen humans try to trick him, to flatter him, to break him. He had never seen one offer him genuine respect. "And why should I believe you?" Son Goku asked, his voice a low grumble, his rage replaced by a deep, wary suspicion. "Why should I trust a human? The jailer of my most hated brother?" "Because I'm telling you the truth," Naruto said simply. "And because I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not asking you to come with me. I'm not asking you to fight for me. I'm just telling you that you don't have to be alone in that cave of yours forever." He turned to leave. "The clans will probably find this entrance eventually. When they do, what you do is your choice. But I hope you choose to be something more than just the monster they think you are." He began to walk back towards the tunnels, his mission seemingly complete. "Wait." Son Goku's voice stopped him. Naruto turned back. The great ape king looked at him, his golden eyes filled with a complex mixture of pride, suspicion, and a sliver of something new. "You are different. Not like the others." He let out a grudging sigh. "My sibling, Kokuo. The Five Tails. It roams the Great Plains to the north. It is proud and aloof, and trusts no one. It will not listen to your pretty words." "I'll keep that in mind," Naruto said with a small smile. "I am not helping you," Son Goku stated gruffly, crossing his massive arms. "I am merely curious. I wish to see if your foolish idealism shatters against Kokuo's indifference. It will be amusing." Naruto chuckled. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't even an alliance. But it was a start. He had faced down the proud Monkey King, not with power, but with honesty, and had walked away with a grudging truce. "It was good talking to you, Son Goku," Naruto said. He turned and disappeared back into the tunnels, leaving the king of the sages alone on his throne, with a new, impossible thought to contemplate in the silence of his volcanic kingdom. The thought of a human who might actually be worth listening to. The Song of the High Plains. Leaving the fiery heart of the furnace of the gods felt like stepping out of a king's court and back into the vast, indifferent world. The grudging respect of Son Goku was a small, hard-won victory, but it was not friendship. It was the acknowledgement of one power to another, a stay of execution granted by a prideful monarch. As Naruto navigated his way back through the sweltering lava tubes and emerged once more into the cool mountain air, he knew that the next stage of his pilgrimage would require a touch far lighter than even the one he had used on the Monkey King. He traveled north. The jagged, smoke-belching peaks of the volcanic range slowly gave way to rolling, stone-strewn foothills, and then, after weeks of travel, the terrain opened up into something Naruto had never seen before. It was a vast, wind-swept expanse of highlands, a sea of tall, golden grass that stretched to the horizon in every direction, broken only by weathered, ancient stone monoliths that stood like lonely sentinels, carved with spiral patterns by centuries of wind. This was the great plain Son Goku had spoken of, the domain of Kokuo, the Five Tails. The sky here was immense, a deep, clear blue, and the wind never ceased. It was a constant, sighing presence that whispered through the grass and moaned around the standing stones. It was a land that felt profoundly, overwhelmingly free. The air here is clean, Kurama noted, his mental voice more contemplative than usual. There is little of the stink of human ambition. My sibling chose its home well. A place where it can run forever. How do we even begin to find it? Naruto asked, shielding his eyes as he scanned the endless horizon. In a place this big, it could be anywhere. You will not find Kokuo by tracking it, Kurama advised. It is not a creature that leaves a heavy footprint on the world, physically or spiritually. Its chakra is serene, controlled. It blends with the wind, with the natural energy of this place. You must listen, not look. Feel the song of the land, and you may hear its harmony within it. Naruto understood. This was a task for sage mode, but not for its sensory applications. This required a deeper connection, a more passive form of observation. For the first month, he simply wandered. He established no camp, built no fires. He ate wild berries and drank from clear, fast-running streams. He became a part of the landscape, a silent, walking figure in the sea of grass. He let the rhythm of the plain seep into his bones, the constant wind and the vast silence becoming his companions. He would spend entire days sitting atop one of the ancient monoliths, his legs crossed, his eyes closed, doing nothing but listening. He let his sage senses merge with the world around him, feeling the flow of the wind, the life of the hardy grasses, the slow, geological time of the stones themselves. He was searching for a note in the symphony of nature that was different, a current in the river of natural energy that was sentient. He felt it for the first time on a cool, clear evening, as the twin moons began their ascent. It wasn't a spike of power or a well of hatred. It was a faint, melodic hum on the very edge of his perception. It was a feeling of profound, unshakable peace, of a being perfectly at one with its surroundings. It was the feeling of absolute freedom. It was Kokuo. And it was miles away, moving with incredible speed, a whisper on the wind. For another week, he tracked this feeling. He never gave chase. He simply noted its direction, its flow, and adjusted his own wandering path to intersect with it. He was not a hunter stalking his prey. He was a traveler hoping to cross paths with a kindred spirit. He finally saw it with his own eyes at dawn. The sun was just beginning to crest the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He stood on a high ridge, looking down into a vast basin where the grass was silvered with morning dew. And there, in the center of the basin, it was. The sight stole his breath away. Kokuo was a creature of impossible grace and beauty. It was a magnificent being that seemed to be a fusion of a powerful white horse and a sleek, intelligent dolphin. Its body was pure, brilliant white, its form muscular and elegant. 5 long, flowing tails drifted behind it like ribbons of ethereal steam, catching the morning light. It moved with a silent, effortless speed, galloping across the plains not out of fear or haste, but for the sheer, unadulterated joy of movement. It was the living embodiment of the wind, a force of nature given form. Majestic, isn't it? Kurama's voice was a low rumble of grudging admiration. It always believed that true power was not in crushing one's enemies, but in the freedom to never have to. Naruto didn't respond. He simply watched, captivated. He knew, with absolute certainty, that any aggressive move, any overt attempt at communication, would be a violation. It would be like shouting in a library, a desecration of the peace that Kokuo held so sacred. He had to use a different approach. He descended from the ridge and walked to the center of the basin, to a place he sensed Kokuo would eventually pass. And there, he sat down, crossed his legs, and began to meditate. He didn't try to hide his chakra, nor did he flare it. He simply let it be, a calm, steady presence in the vast emptiness. He muted his own powerful signature, letting only the peaceful, warm energy of his base state emanate from him, a silent declaration of non-aggression. He entered sage mode, but not to sense his surroundings. He did it to become one with them, to add his own quiet note to the symphony of the plains. He became just another rock, another blade of grass, another whisper on the wind. He sat there for 3 days. He didn't eat. He didn't drink. He didn't sleep. He was a statue, a monument to patience. The sun beat down on him, the cold night winds whipped around him, but he did not move. He could feel Kokuo. The Baiju circled the basin, its melodic chakra signature a constant presence. It was observing him, studying him with an ancient, cautious intelligence. It felt his peaceful energy, his lack of killing intent, his strange harmony with nature. It felt his connection to Kurama, not as a jailer to a prisoner, but as a balanced, resonant chord. It was intrigued. On the dawn of the 4th day, Naruto felt a change. The melodic hum of Kokuo's chakra was no longer circling. It was approaching. Slowly. Cautiously. Naruto didn't open his eyes. He remained perfectly still, his breathing even, his heart calm. He heard the soft thud of hooves on the turf, a sound far gentler than he would have expected from such a large creature. He felt a massive presence loom over him, casting a shadow that blocked the morning sun. He smelled the clean, fresh scent of ozone and steam. A voice, neither male nor female, but echoing with the serene, powerful timbre of the wind itself, entered his mind. "You are a strange little human," the voice said. It held no malice, no pride, no sorrow. It held only a vast, detached curiosity. "You have been sitting here for days. You are not a hunter. You are not a soldier. You do not seek to capture or to fight. What are you?" Naruto slowly opened his eyes. He was looking up at the magnificent, intelligent face of the 5 tails. Its eyes were a soft, gentle green, filled with a wisdom that seemed as old as the mountains themselves. "I am a traveler," Naruto replied, speaking aloud, his voice calm. "My name is Naruto. I came here to see the wind run free." Kokuo tilted its great head, considering his words. "You carry the scent of my brother, the fox. Yet you do not carry the stink of his cage. He is with you, not within you. An interesting paradox." "He's my friend," Naruto said simply. "Friendship is a concept for beings who require companionship," Kokuo stated, not as a judgment, but as an observation. "I require only the sky above me and the grass beneath my feet. What is it you want from me, little human? You did not come all this way simply to watch the scenery." "No," Naruto admitted. "I came to deliver a message. From an old man, a long time ago. He said that though you were scattered, you would one day be brought together again. By a boy who would show you a different path." Kokuo was silent for a long moment. The sage. I have not thought of his words in many centuries. He spoke of a great change. A time of understanding. The Baiju looked at Naruto, its green eyes piercing. "Do you believe you are this child of change?" "I believe," Naruto said honestly, "that the world is about to change, whether anyone wants it to or not. And I believe that you, and your siblings, have a choice to make. You can either be swept away by the coming storm, or you can be the wind that guides it." Before Kokuo could respond, the world shook. It was not a natural tremor. It was a violent, percussive shockwave, followed by the sound of grinding rock. From all sides of the basin, the earth itself rose up. Massive walls of stone, hundreds of feet high, erupted from the plains, slamming together to form a colossal, inescapable bowl. It was an earth-style jutsu on a scale Naruto had never witnessed, a technique that could only be performed by dozens of master-level shinobi working in perfect concert. In seconds, the endless plains had become a cage. On the lip of the newly formed canyon, figures appeared. Dozens of them. Shinobi of the land of earth, clad in brown and gray armor, their faces set in grim, determined lines. Kokuo let out a sharp cry, not of pain, but of pure, frustrated rage. Its serene aura vanished, replaced by a storm of boiling, pressurized chakra. Humans. They always do this. They cannot stand to see something free. They must always build a cage. The Baiju reared up, its 5 tails lashing out, and unleashed a massive blast of pure steam, a jutsu designed to boil and blast its way through any obstacle. But the Iwa Nin were prepared. They slammed their hands on the canyon rim. Earth-style, Rock lodging wall. Layers of rock, reinforced with chakra, folded over each other, absorbing the blast with barely a scratch. It's no use. The lead Iwa shinobi yelled, a man Naruto recognized from his time in the mining towns as a captain of the Kamizuru clan, known for their bewielding techniques. The Five Tails is trapped. Prepare the primary seals. We will bring this beast to heel for the glory of Iwa. Kokuo, seeing its path to freedom cut off, began to panic, its movements becoming frantic, its power lashing out without focus. Naruto shot to his feet. He had tried the gentle approach. He had respected Kokuo's freedom. Now, these shinobi had come to take it away. And he would not allow it. Don't panic, Kokuo, Naruto yelled. They haven't won yet. An opening is all we need. He flared his chakra, not the golden cloak of the Nine Tails, but the vibrant, powerful orange of his own perfect sage mode. He turned to the Baijuu. I'm going to make a distraction. A big one. When you see the opening, you run. Don't look back. Just run. Kokuo looked at him, its intelligent green eyes wide with surprise. This human, who had sat so peacefully for days, was now preparing to fight an entire army. Not to capture it, but to free it. You would fight them. For me? Naruto grinned, a wide, confident, foxy grin. That's what friends do. He turned to face the canyon wall, the dozens of elite Iwa shinobi looking down on him like a bug in a bowl. All right, you guys, Naruto yelled, his voice booming with sage-infused chakra. You want to build a cage? Fine. But you're gonna have to get through me first. Shadow Clone Jutsu. In a massive, rolling explosion of smoke, the floor of the basin was filled with hundreds of orange-eyed Narutos. They turned as one to face the stunned Iwa nin. Let's play, they all said in unison. The cost of freedom. The sudden appearance of an army where a moment before there had been only one man sent a wave of shock through the disciplined ranks of the Iwa shinobi. The Kamizuru captain, perched on the rim of the great stone prison, stared down at the sea of orange-eyed Narutos, his tactical mind struggling to process the impossibility of the jutsu. An army of clones? He yelled, his voice a mixture of disbelief and fury. A genjutsu. Do not be fooled. It is a simple illusion to break our focus. All units, maintain the walls. Sealing team, begin your work. A genjutsu, huh? The hundreds of Narutos said in unison, a chorus of cheeky voices echoing up the canyon walls. They all grinned. Then I guess you won't mind this. The clones moved as one, a synchronized wave of action. They didn't charge the walls. Instead, dozens of them slammed their hands onto the ground. Earth-style, mobile core. The very floor of the basin began to tremble. The Iwa shinobi, masters of the earth, felt their greatest weapon being turned against them. Massive pillars of rock, controlled by the Naruto clones, erupted from the ground, not to attack, but to serve as launching pads. Other clones leapt onto these rising pillars, propelling them high into the air towards the canyon rim. They're not illusions. A terrified Iwa nin shrieked as a clone landed on the wall near him, a spiraling Rasengan already forming in his hand. The battle devolved into chaos. The Iwa shinobi, who had been prepared for a static siege against a single, large target, were now faced with a multi-front war against hundreds of unpredictable, sage-powered opponents. Clones were everywhere, scaling the walls, engaging the shinobi and taijutsu, and disrupting the sealing teams with perfectly thrown kunai. Kokuo watched from the center of the basin, its initial panic replaced by a profound, stunned awe. The little human wasn't just fighting. He was orchestrating a symphony of chaos, his clones moving with a flawless coordination that defied logic. He wasn't trying to defeat the army, he was tying them up, forcing their attention onto himself, away from the Baijuu. Every clone that was destroyed by a crushing rock fist or an explosive bee from a Kamizuru user would disappear in a puff of smoke, but two more would take its place, their assault relentless. He is expending an impossible amount of chakra, Kokuo thought, its ancient mind struggling to comprehend the sacrifice. All of this. For me? Naruto, the real Naruto, stood near the Baijuu, his hands in a cross-shaped seal, his focus absolute as he commanded the battle. It's not enough to just distract them, he said, his eyes closed. They're too stubborn. Their walls are too strong. We have to break the cage. Kokuo. Are you ready? Ready for what? The Baijuu asked, its melodic voice filled with uncertainty. To run faster than you've ever run before, Naruto replied, opening his eyes, which burned with a fierce, determined light. He held out his hand. I need some of your chakra. Just a little. Lend me your strength. Let's mix our powers and show them something they've never seen before. Kokuo hesitated. For centuries, its only interaction with humans had been to fight them off. The idea of willingly offering its power was alien. But it looked at the human fighting so desperately for its freedom, and then it looked at the closing walls of the cage. It made a choice. A tendril of pure, white chakra, humming with the power of steam and freedom, flowed from its body and into Naruto's waiting palm. Naruto felt the rush of Kokuo's serene, powerful energy merge with his own sage chakra and Kurama's immense reserves. It was a potent, volatile combination. "All right," he yelled to his clones. "Change of plans. All of you, to me. Now." The hundreds of clones disengaged from their skirmishes, leaping back down to the basin floor. They converged on the original Naruto, forming a massive, tight circle around him. They all held out their hands, and the chakra they had been using began to flow from them, a river of golden sage energy pouring into the center. The Iwa shinobi on the rim watched, confused and wary. "What are they doing?" the Kamizuru captain demanded. "They're giving up?" In the center of the circle, Naruto was molding the colossal amount of energy. He formed a Rasengan in his hand, but it was unlike any he had made before. It was a swirling vortex of his own wind-natured chakra, the boiling power of Kokuo's steam release, and the stabilizing influence of his sage energy. The sphere grew, becoming a massive, seething orb of power, a miniature, contained typhoon. Wind and steam style. Naruto grunted, the effort immense, massive Rasen storm. The clones in the circle had served their purpose. Having given all their chakra to the main body, they disappeared in a cascade of smoke, leaving the original Naruto standing alone, holding a jutsu of terrifying power. "Kokuo. Now," Naruto roared. "Aim for the north wall. Go." He thrust the massive Rasen storm forward. It didn't fly. It expanded, a colossal dome of swirling wind and superheated steam that shot across the basin floor. It was not a cutting attack like the Rasen shuriken, it was a battering ram of irresistible, grinding force. The Iwa nin on the north wall saw it coming. "Brace yourselves. Reinforce the wall." The captain screamed. They poured all of their chakra into their earth jutsu, the stone wall thickening, becoming as dense as diamond. But it was not enough. The Rasen storm hit the wall. For a moment, there was only the sound of a million grinding stones. Then, with a deafening, explosive roar, the unbreakable wall shattered. Not just a hole, but a massive, gaping section of the canyon wall, hundreds of feet wide, was blasted outwards, reduced to gravel and dust. An escape route. Kokuo didn't hesitate. With a grateful cry that sounded like the whistle of the wind through a canyon, it surged forward. It moved with a speed that Naruto had only glimpsed before, its white form a blur against the golden grass of the plains beyond. It shot through the opening in the wall and vanished into the freedom of its homeland. It was free. Naruto fell to one knee, panting, the immense power of the jutsu leaving him drained. Sage mode faded, leaving him weary and exposed. He had done it. He had saved the five tails. But he was now alone, in the center of a cage, surrounded by an army of furious, elite shinobi whose prize had just escaped. The Kamizuru captain stared at the hole in his perfect prison, then at the lone figure of Naruto. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. He let the beast escape. He has made a mockery of the shinobi of Iwa. Kill him. Kill him now. The remaining Iwa nin let out a roar of rage and descended from the walls, a wave of earth and stone aimed at annihilating the boy who had ruined them. Naruto looked at the approaching army and managed a weak, tired grin. "You have a plan, I hope?" Kurama asked, a note of genuine concern in his voice. "Yeah," Naruto gasped, pushing himself to his feet. "It's the one I'm best at." He turned and ran in the opposite direction of Kokuo's escape, drawing the entire Iwa army after him like a matador leading a bull. He was a distraction, buying the five tails precious time to disappear into the vastness of the plains. He dodged rock projectiles, leapt over earth and spikes, and used the last of his sage energy to avoid the swarms of explosive bees from the Kamizuru clan. It was a desperate, chaotic retreat. He was outnumbered, exhausted, and running on fumes. He finally reached the southern wall of the man-made canyon. It was a sheer cliff, hundreds of feet high. He was trapped. The Iwa army closed in behind him, their faces grim with the promise of a brutal death. "Nowhere left to run, demon." The Kamizuru captain sneered, landing a few feet away. "Your tricks are over." "You're right," Naruto said, panting, a wide, triumphant grin spreading across his face. "No more running." He slammed his hand on the ground. "Time for a strategic withdrawal." The Iwa nin braced for an attack, but nothing happened. Then, the captain's eyes widened in horror. He didn't feel Naruto's chakra in front of him anymore. He felt it far, Far away, outside the cage, in the forest where he had first arrived. The Flying Thunder God technique. The location marker he had left on the ancient petrified tree, weeks ago. The figure before them wavered, then dispersed in a puff of smoke. A shadow clone. The real Naruto was already miles away, leaning against a tree, gasping for breath but very much alive. He had faced down the pride of Iwa, freed a Baijuu, and escaped from an inescapable cage. He looked up at the sky, a weary but satisfied smile on his face. 4 Baijuu contacted. 5 to go. His pilgrimage was far from over, but with each impossible victory, the path forward became a little clearer. The Whispering Waterfall. The world warped in a nauseating flash of yellow light, and Naruto collapsed against the rough bark of the ancient petrified tree he had marked weeks ago. The abrupt shift from the high-altitude plains to the dense, humid forest was jarring. His lungs burned, his limbs screamed in protest, and his chakra network felt like a frayed rope, stretched to its absolute limit. The last, desperate use of a Flying Thunder God marker, a jutsu he hadn't truly mastered but knew the theory of, thanks to his father's legacy, had taken every last drop of his remaining energy. He slumped to the ground, his back against the stone-like wood, gasping for breath. The sounds of the Iwa army faded, replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of a mountain bird. He was safe. He was exhausted. And he was utterly, completely spent. That, Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, laced with a mixture of profound exhaustion and grudging admiration, was an incredibly foolish and reckless display. Remind me never to let you combine my chakra with that of my insufferably serene sibling ever again. The resulting energy is volatile. It worked, didn't it? Naruto panted, a weary grin touching his lips. He had done it. He had faced down an army, broken their unbreakable prison, and freed a Baijuu. The cost was steep, but the victory was sweet. It worked, Kurama conceded. But you have now painted a massive target on your back. The Senju already knew of you. The Uchiha fear you. The sand has felt your power. And now, you have thoroughly and completely humiliated the shinobi of Iwa. You are no longer a myth, kid. You are becoming a notorious entity. The blonde demon of the Senju is now also the cage breaker of the high plains. They will hunt you. Let 'em hunt, Naruto said, his confidence returning as his stamina slowly began to trickle back, his Uzumaki vitality already starting the repair process. It was worth it. Kokuo is free. He pushed himself into a sitting position. Alright, let's take stock. That's Shukaku, Isobu, Son Goku, and Kokuo. 4 down, 5 to go. There was a distinct pause from within the seal. You are an idiot. Hey! What was that for? Count again, fool, Kurama grumbled. Shukaku is 1. Isobu is 2. Son Goku is 3. Kokuo is 4. And what of the miserable, stinking ball of fur you carry around in your own gut? Did you forget about me? Naruto blinked. Then he facepalmed. Kurama was right. He had been so focused on the Baijuu out there that he had forgotten to count his own partner. Oh. Right. So that's 5 contacted, 4 to go. Indeed, Kurama said dryly. Perhaps you should focus less on dramatic entrances and more on basic arithmetic. Naruto spent the next several days recovering in the secluded mountain forest, living off the land and allowing his chakra coils to heal from the immense strain. The Iwa shinobi would be scouring the plains for him, but his teleportation had given him a lead of hundreds of miles. He was a ghost in their system. During his recovery, he and Kurama planned their next move. So, who's next on the Baijuu tour? Naruto asked as he sharpened a kunai. We've got Matatabi, Gyuki, Saiken, and Chomei left. Matatabi and Gyuki, the 2 tails and 8 tails, reside in the harsh, lightning-scarred mountains to the far northeast, Kurama explained. The land that will one day belong to Kumagakure. A dangerous place. You have already made an enemy of the A clan who dominate that region. Yeah, probably not a good idea to knock on their front door just yet, Naruto agreed. Saiken, the 6 tails, is a creature of the damp, humid places. Its chakra signature is difficult to track. It could be anywhere, Kurama continued. Which leaves Chomei, the 7 tails. The horned beetle, Naruto remembered. Lucky 7 Chomei. What's his deal? He is the smallest of us, but perhaps the most unusual, Kurama said. He is cheerful. Annoyingly so. He does not see the world in terms of power or freedom, but in terms of luck and fun. His chakra is light, flighty, and difficult to pinpoint. According to the last vestiges of the sage's tracking, he makes his home in a land of immense trees and a great, hidden waterfall. Naruto's mind searched the mental map of the world he was slowly building. A land famous for a giant, hidden waterfall. Takigakure. The village hidden by a waterfall. Precisely, Kurama confirmed. A small but fiercely independent shinobi village. They are not one of the great powers, but they are renowned for their secrecy and their xenophobia. They guard their village with a zeal that borders on paranoia. If Chomei is there, they will not welcome a visitor asking questions about their lucky god. A new kind of challenge. Not a desert fortress, not a misty archipelago, not a volcanic prison. A hidden village that had perfected the art of isolation. It was the perfect next step. It was relatively close, and it was a neutral territory where the Iwa were unlikely to search for him. All right, Naruto said, standing up and strapping on his pack. Takigakure it is. Let's go see if we can't bring Chomei some good luck. The journey took him out of the land of earth and into a dense, sprawling forest that seemed to cover the entire world. The trees here were colossal, larger than any he had ever seen, their canopies so thick that they blocked out the sun, creating a perpetual green twilight on the forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, moss, and blooming flowers. It was a land teeming with life. He traveled for weeks, moving with the stealth of a seasoned shinobi. He knew Iwa patrols would be hunting the borders, and he had no desire for a rematch so soon. He used his sage senses to navigate, feeling the flow of chakra from patrols and animal life, and moved like a whisper between them. He became a part of the forest, his presence no more intrusive than a falling leaf. He knew he was close when he began to hear it. A low, constant rumble that vibrated through the very soles of his feet. It grew louder with each passing day, from a faint hum to a thunderous roar that drowned out all other sound. He finally broke through the tree line and stopped, his breath catching in his throat. Before him was a sight of breathtaking, impossible scale. It was a waterfall, but that word was wholly inadequate. It was as if the ocean itself had been tipped on its side. A colossal, unbroken curtain of water, miles wide, plunged thousands of feet into a massive, mist-filled basin below. The sheer power of it was awe-inspiring, the roar of physical presence that vibrated in his bones. And hidden behind this impenetrable wall of water, he knew, was the village of Takigakure. Impressive, Kurama admitted, a rare note of wonder in his voice. A formidable natural defense. The entire village is shielded from the world. Getting inside will not be easy. Naruto scanned the area. The cliffs on either side of the waterfall were sheer and slick with mist. The basin below was a churning cauldron of rapids. There was no visible entrance, no bridge, no path. The waterfall was a perfect, seamless barrier. He closed his eyes, extending his sage senses. He felt the immense, churning power of the water. And behind it, he felt the contained, bustling energy of a hidden village. And within that village, he felt it. A chakra signature that was bubbly, light, and almost giggling. It fluttered like a butterfly, a stark contrast to the raging inferno of Shukaku or the weeping sorrow of Isobu. It was Chomei. And it was not rampaging free. It was contained. The village had somehow managed to capture and seal the seven tails. They have him, Naruto murmured. How could a village this small capture a Baijuo? Their leader, a man named Shibuki, comes from a line of shinobi who perfected the use of hero water, Kurama explained, drawing on ancient knowledge. A sacred water from their lands that can temporarily amplify a user's chakra 100-fold, at the cost of their life force. It is a forbidden, sacrificial jutsu. They must have used it to subdue Chomei. Naruto's jaw tightened. They had sacrificed their own people to cage a being of luck and joy. The irony was sickening. He spent the next few days observing, hidden in the dense forest. He saw Taki patrols, their movements swift and silent, their faces hidden by distinctive masks. They were good. They were true shinobi of the wild. He realized he could never get past them through simple stealth. He needed to find a secret way in, just as he had with Son Goku's volcano. He focused his sage senses not on the shinobi, but on the waterfall itself. He felt the flow of the water, the shape of the rock behind it. And he found an anomaly. Near the very top of the falls, hidden by the thickest part of the cascading water, was a spot where the rock face felt different. It was a seal. A massive, complex fuinjutsu array, woven directly into the stone and powered by the kinetic energy of the waterfall itself. It was a brilliant, self-sustaining barrier. And it was the only way in. Breaking it with force was out of the question. It would alert the entire village and bring their wrath down upon him. He had to be smarter. He had to be an Uzumaki. Okay, Kurama, Naruto said, a new plan forming in his mind. I can't break the door down. So, I'm going to find the key. He knew that a seal of this magnitude, especially an Uzumaki-style one, would require a specific chakra frequency to open safely from the inside. It would be a frequency known only to the village leader, the one who held the key to their greatest secret. His mission changed. He was no longer just trying to get in. He had to get close enough to the Taki leader to analyze his chakra, learn the key, and then use it to walk right through their front door. It was an incredibly risky, intricate plan that relied on subtlety and skill, not power. Naruto settled in for the long haul, a patient predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The stage was set for his next great challenge, the infiltration of the unbreachable village, and a conversation with the luckiest, and perhaps most deceptively powerful, of all the tailed beasts. Echoes of the Sage. Naruto's patient observation of Takigakure lasted another week. He had the location of the seal and a theory on how to bypass it, but getting close to the village leader, Shibuki, was proving impossible. The man was as reclusive as his village was isolated. Naruto knew a direct assault or a lengthy infiltration would only end in failure and create another clan of enemies. He needed to force the leader's hand, to draw him out. He needed a crisis. So, he created one. One night, Naruto channeled a massive amount of his own chakra into the colossal waterfall itself. He didn't try to stop it or destroy it. He simply changed its tune. Using his mastery of nature transformation, he infused the water with a chaotic, agitated energy, making the roar of the falls sound angry, discordant. To the shinobi of Taki, whose lives were set to the rhythm of that constant roar, it was as if the soul of their village had suddenly become sick. It was a subtle, brilliant act of psychological warfare. Panic erupted within the hidden village. The complex Fuinjutsu array on the entrance, powered by the waterfall's kinetic energy, began to flicker and destabilize. Alarms blared. Shibuki, a stern man with a heavy sense of duty, was forced to emerge with his elite guard to the top of the waterfall to personally inspect and reinforce the seal. That was the opening Naruto needed. Hidden miles away in the canopy, his sage senses active, he focused entirely on Shibuki's chakra as the leader worked on the seal. He dissected its unique frequency, its signature, the specific key that identified him as the master of the barrier. He memorized it, mapping its every nuance. An hour later, once Shibuki and his guards had retreated back into the village, their fears temporarily assuaged, Naruto moved. He approached the top of the falls, a place no outsider should have been able to reach. He stood before the invisible barrier, the curtain of water crashing down just inches from his face. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and molded his own chakra to perfectly replicate the frequency of Shibuki's. He held out his hand and gently pushed. For a moment, there was resistance. Then, with a soft hum that was lost in the roar of the falls, the barrier yielded. The curtain of water before him parted like a theater curtain, revealing a dark, hidden tunnel leading into the rock. He had walked through their front door using their own key. Inside, the village was on high alert. But they were looking for an external threat, not one already within their walls. Naruto, cloaking himself in the natural energy of the stone and water around him, was a ghost in their system. He followed the bubbly, cheerful chakra of Chomei to its source, a large, hollow tree at the very center of the village, a beautiful prison that served as the home of the Jinchuriki. He found him practicing with a single, battered shuriken, his movements listless. He was a young boy, perhaps 12 or 13, with dark, choppy hair and weary eyes that seemed too old for his face. He was not revered or feared, he was simply ignored. A secret to be kept, a duty to be fulfilled, but not a person to be acknowledged. "You're pretty good with that," Naruto said, his voice soft. The boy jumped, spinning around, the shuriken held in a practiced, defensive grip. He stared at the blonde stranger who had appeared from nowhere. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" he demanded, his voice tight with suspicion. "My name is Naruto. And I'm a friend," he said, holding up his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "Of Chomei." A new voice, bubbly and excited, echoed directly in the boy's mind, and by extension, Naruto's. "A friend. A new friend. Did you hear that? I told you today was a lucky day." The boy stumbled back, his eyes widening in shock. He clutched his head, shocked that the secret voice he alone had heard his entire life was now being acknowledged by an outsider. Naruto grinned. "He's a lively one, isn't he?" He flared his own chakra, letting the warm, golden energy of his partnership with Kurama wash over them. "I came to tell you both that being a Jinchuriki doesn't have to be a lonely duty. It can be a partnership. Friendship. That's the real good luck charm." He didn't stay long. He learned the boy's name was Kiraha. He spoke to them of the other Baijuu, of his dream of a world where they could all be together. He showed Kiraha that his burden could also be his greatest strength, his closest companion. When he left, slipping back out through the waterfall as silently as he came, He left Kiraha not with a solution, but with a new, radical idea, that the secret in his heart didn't have to be a source of isolation, but of friendship. Naruto quickened his pace. The clock was ticking. The shinobi world was small, and his reputation was growing. He needed to find the last two Baiju'u before the great clans could react. His senses led him next to a vast, humid swampland between the land of earth and the land of water. It was a place of rot and decay, and it was here he felt the slimy, sluggish chakra of Saiken, the six tails. He found the great slug not rampaging, but hiding deep within a murky bog, its mere presence causing the surrounding flora to decay into a corrosive sludge. Saiken was a creature of immense power, but it was gentle by nature, and it was horrified by the unintentional destruction its acidic body caused. It had isolated itself out of guilt. Naruto didn't approach with words. He approached with action. He entered sage mode and stood at the edge of the bog. He placed his hands on the ground and, drawing on his perfect control of natural energy, began to purify the land. He didn't change the swamp, but he created an oasis of clean water and vibrant life around Saiken, a small sanctuary where its corrosive nature was neutralized by the pure energy of the world. Saiken, a being more instinct than intellect, understood the gesture. It felt the warmth, the life, and it saw a human not trying to capture it or fight it, but trying to heal the damage it caused. Naruto didn't speak of friendship. He simply showed it. He stayed for a week, maintaining the sanctuary, proving that Saiken's power could be balanced, before moving on, leaving the six tails in its purified home, with the new understanding that it did not have to be a creature of decay. Finally, only two remained. Matatabi and Gyuki. The two tails and the eight tails. His senses led him to the harsh, lightning-scarred mountains of the northeast, the lands dominated by the A clan. This was enemy territory. He found them faster than he expected. He was drawn not by their chakra alone, but by the sounds of battle. On a high, storm-racked plateau, he witnessed a chaotic scene. The elegant, flame-wreathed form of Matatabi, the two-tailed cat, and the colossal, powerful form of Gyuki, the ox-octopus, were fighting back-to-back, holding off a large force of A-clan shinobi. Their warriors, led by their young, fiercely ambitious clan chief, were attempting to capture both Baiju'u at once. Their power will make our clan the strongest. The young chief roared, his body already crackling with his signature lightning release armor. Do not let them escape. Naruto saw his opening. This was not a hunt, it was a battle of equals. He entered the fray like a thunderbolt, appearing between the shinobi and the Baiju'u. Enough, he roared, his KCM2 cloak erupting in a blaze of golden light, forcing both sides back. You! The A-chief snarled, recognizing the blonde hair and overwhelming power from the reports of his father's defeat years ago. The blonde demon of the Senju. You dare show your face in our lands? I go where I please, Naruto retorted. He turned his attention to the two Baiju'u. Gyuki, with its intelligent, knowing eyes, immediately sensed the harmony between Naruto and Kurama. Matatabi, graceful and wary, recognized a fellow feline spirit. I am Naruto Uzumaki, friend of Kurama, he announced telepathically. I am not here to capture you. I am here to stop this pointless cycle. He faced the A-chief. You want to make your clan strong? You think enslaving them is the way? Look at me. A Jinchuriki who is a partner to his Baiju'u is 1,000 times stronger than one who is a warden. True power comes from respect, not from chains. He didn't fight. He debated. On a storm-swept battlefield, surrounded by warriors and monsters, he argued for a new way. He spoke of Sonagakure's new potential, of Takigakure's reinforced hope. He spoke of the Sage of Six Paths' dream of cooperation. Gyuki, the wisest of the Baiju'u after Kurama, was the first to understand. The boy speaks the truth, its deep, intelligent voice echoed in the minds of everyone present. I have seen the cycle of hatred. This is a new path. The A-chief, seeing the conviction of his target and the unshakable power of Naruto, was forced to pause. The logic was undeniable. His clan's history was filled with failed attempts to control the Baiju'u. This stranger was offering a different, more powerful solution. Naruto didn't wait for an agreement. He had planted the seed. He had shown them the possibility. His work here was done. The choice is yours, he said to the young chief, before giving a nod to the two Baiju'u. I hope you all choose wisely. With a final flash of golden light, he vanished, leaving the shinobi of the A-clan and the two Baiju'u standing in a stunned, uncertain truce on the battlefield. He had done it. 8 Baiju'u. 8 siblings. He had contacted them all. He had faced down their hosts, their jailers, their hunters. He had not captured a single one. He had freed 3, and fundamentally change the relationship for the other 5. His pilgrimage was complete. As he journeyed south, a profound sense of finality settled over him. For 6 long years, he had wandered the world, a ghost trying to fix a broken past. But now, he felt a pull. A deep, resonant call from the place he had once fled. It was the chakra of his home. The land of fire. And within it, he felt a familiar, raging, and utterly wild chakra signature he had subconsciously been avoiding for years. It was the final piece of the puzzle. The 9th beast. The Kurama of this era. It is time, Kit, his Kurama said, his voice grim. The world is changing. The truce in the land of fire is fragile. It is time for you to go home. Naruto nodded, his expression hardening with resolve. His journey as the wandering sage was over. His destiny, and the final, most dangerous confrontation of his mission, awaited him in the land he had once sworn to protect. It was time to face himself. Chapter 7, The Unification. The world softened as Naruto journeyed south. The harsh, unforgiving landscapes of his 6-year pilgrimage, the endless sands of wind, the sorrowful mists of water, the stone heart of earth, and the lightning-scarred peaks of the northeast, gave way to the familiar, vibrant green of the land of fire. The trees grew taller, their leaves a familiar shade. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and life, felt like a welcoming embrace. It felt like home. He was 25 years old, a man forged in the crucible of a lonely, self-imposed exile. The naive, boisterous boy who had fallen through time was a distant memory, a ghost that sometimes whispered in his ear. In his place stood a sage, his gaze calm and his spirit anchored by a profound understanding of the world and its ancient, powerful inhabitants. The journey had not just been a mission to find the Baijuo, it had been a quest to find himself, stripped of prophecy and destiny. His connection with his own Kurama had deepened into a seamless partnership. Their minds were 2 rooms in the same house, their thoughts flowing between them with the ease of a quiet conversation. You are quieter than you have been in years, Kit, Kurama noted, his voice a low rumble in Naruto's mind as they walked a familiar path towards the Naka River. Just thinking, Naruto replied aloud, his voice soft. It's been 6 years. For them, it's been a lifetime. Hashirama and Madara are men now. Clan leaders, maybe. The truce I forced. I wonder if it held. Peace is a fragile thing, Kurama stated. Especially when it is built on the pride of men like Madara. The fact that the world has not yet descended into a war between the Uchiha and Senju suggests your sacrifice had an effect. But for how long? As they drew closer to the heart of the land, Naruto's sage senses began to pick up the familiar chakra signatures of the 2 great clans. They were like 2 massive, dormant volcanoes, their power immense but contained. The tentative peace, it seemed, was still holding. His pilgrimage was complete, but his final objective remained. The one Baijuo he had intentionally avoided. The one being in this world that could unravel everything. He felt it as he approached the Valley of the End, a place that held no significance in this era but echoed with a future of terrible conflict in his own memory. It was a maelstrom of chakra. A vortex of pure, untamed rage, hatred, and a loneliness so profound it was a physical wound on the world. It was the chakra of the 9-tailed fox of this time. Wild. Untamed. And utterly, terrifyingly powerful. He's close, Naruto murmured, his expression hardening with resolve. Be careful, Naruto, his Kurama warned, a rare note of genuine concern in his voice. I am him, but he is not me. He holds all of my hatred for humanity, all of my rage at being seen as a mindless weapon, but none of our shared history. He will not see you as a partner. He will see you as a cage. He won't see me as a cage, Naruto corrected softly. He'll see me as a mirror. And you as a memory of what he's lost. He found the wild Kurama in a massive cavern deep within the forest, a place where the earth's natural energy was so dense it was almost palpable. The beast was colossal, a mountain of crimson fur and raw power, its 9 tails lashing out with enough force to shatter the cavern walls. Its eyes were slits of pure, malevolent red, burning with the hatred that had festered for centuries. It was not the begrudging partner Naruto knew, but a true demon, a physical incarnation of rage. The moment Naruto stepped into the cavern, the great fox's head snapped towards him. Its lips peeled back in a monstrous snarl, revealing teeth like daggers. A human, a voice boomed, not in Naruto's mind, but in the air itself, a sound that was pure, unrestrained malice. You reek of my own kind, yet you wear the skin of a man. An abomination. A Jinchuriki. Have you come to try and chain me as the old man did? Naruto stood his ground, his expression calm. He didn't activate his golden cloak. He didn't enter sage mode. He simply pulled up his shirt, revealing the intricate, spiraling 8 trigram seal on his stomach. I haven't come to chain you, Kurama, Naruto said. I've come to make you whole. The wild fox recoiled as if struck. You know my name. Lies. Tricks. I will tear you apart. It lunged, a tidal wave of claws and teeth aimed at erasing the human who dared speak to it with such impossible familiarity. Naruto didn't flinch. He simply placed his hand over the seal on his stomach and closed his eyes, plunging into his own mindscape. Now, Kurama. Within the vast, familiar chamber of his mind, his own Kurama, the Kurama who had fought beside him, who had acknowledged him, opened his eyes. A torrent of his immense, controlled chakra flooded out, not into the physical world, but through the metaphysical link Naruto had forged with the wild Baijuo. In the cavern, the attacking fox froze mid-lunge, its body seized by an invisible force. Its malevolent red eyes widened in shock as a second consciousness, ancient and powerful and impossibly familiar, washed over it. It was its own voice, its own soul, but tempered with centuries of experience, wisdom, and something that felt horrifyingly like friendship. Who? What are you? The wild Kurama thought, its rage momentarily eclipsed by profound confusion. I am you, Naruto's Kurama projected, his voice echoing in the shared mental space. I am the you that learned. The you that remembered the old man's words. The you that found a partner instead of a jailer. I am the other half of your soul, and you are the half I lost to time. The wild Kurama roared in denial, thrashing against the invisible force, but it was not a physical restraint. It was the pull of its own fractured essence, yearning to be reunited. Your hatred, Naruto's voice echoed in the cavern, his eyes still closed. It comes from your loneliness. And your loneliness comes from being incomplete. You were never meant to be this creature of pure rage. You are yin and yang, power and wisdom. But you were split apart. Let me fix it. Let us fix it. Naruto slammed his open palm onto the cavern floor. Sage Art, 8 trigrams Unification Seal. The seal on Naruto's stomach blazed to life, its intricate pattern spreading out from his body, across the floor of the cavern, forming a massive Fuinjutsu array. It was not a cage. It was a crucible. The wild Kurama, caught in the array, let out a final roar of defiance that slowly turned into a cry of recognition, of release. Its massive form dissolved into a torrent of pure, violent crimson chakra, the raw, untamed yin half of its power. The chakra surged towards Naruto, not as an attack, but drawn by an irresistible, magnetic force. Naruto became a gateway. The raging yin chakra poured into the seal, not to be contained, but to be reunited. Within his mindscape, the two halves met. The raging, chaotic crimson of the past slammed into the controlled, powerful orange of the future. For a moment, there was a violent, silent explosion of pure energy. Then, the two forces began to swirl together, merging into a perfect, harmonious vortex of unimaginable power. Naruto's own Kurama, now complete, let out a roar that was not of rage, but of pure, unadulterated triumph. The 9-tailed fox was whole again for the first time in an age. Back in the physical world, Naruto fell to one knee, panting, sweat pouring down his face. The strain had been immense. The cavern was now empty, the wild Baijuo gone, absorbed into the perfect vessel who now carried its complete, unified soul. I can feel it all, Kurama's voice echoed in his mind, now deeper, more resonant, filled with a power that dwarfed anything they had ever wielded before. My full strength. The rage of my youth tempered by the wisdom of my age. Kit. What have you done? What I promised, Naruto gasped, a wide, weary grin spreading across his face. I gave you back what was taken from you. He slowly pushed himself to his feet. He felt the change within him. The well of chakra he could draw upon was no longer a vast ocean, it was a universe. His power was absolute. His pilgrimage was truly over. He had healed the Baijuo, and in the process, had healed the last of his own fractured loneliness. He was no longer a boy out of time, but a man who stood outside of it, a power unto himself. He looked towards the north, towards the lands of the Senju and the Uchiha. He could feel their chakra signatures, the two dormant volcanoes on the verge of eruption. His self-imposed exile was over. It was time to return. But he would not return as a desperate refugee or a mysterious asset. He would return as the eye of the storm. The summit at the river's bend. Naruto walked north, his steps light, his spirit calm. The reunion of Kurama's soul had settled a profound peace within him. The immense, chaotic power now resting in his core felt not like a weapon, but like a quiet, steady sun. He was whole in a way he had never been before. He moved through the familiar forests of the land of fire, a land caught in the grip of a fragile, 6-year peace. The truce Naruto's exile had bought had held, But it was a cold peace, a stalemate born of fear and pride. The Senju and Uchiha had ceased their open warfare, but they had not set aside their hatred. They watched each other across fortified borders, their clans growing, training, and waiting for the other to show the slightest sign of weakness. This long, tense peace had an unintended consequence. Without the constant, life or death struggle against each other, Hashirama and Madara had not been forged in the same fires as their canon counterparts. They were powerful, certainly, the undisputed leaders of their clans, but they had not been pushed to the godlike extremes Naruto knew they were capable of. Their growth had stagnated, tempered by a peace neither of them knew how to break. Naruto decided his first stop would not be the Senju compound, but the place where his friendship with Hashirama had truly begun, the place where he had built a bridge with Madara, the Naka River. He sat on the same large, smooth stone where the two boys had found him so many years ago, and simply waited. He didn't flare his chakra or call out. He just let his presence, his unique and now unmistakable signature, settle over the land like the morning mist. It didn't take long. The first to arrive was Hashirama. He appeared not with a jutsu, but with the quiet rustle of leaves, stepping out from the trees. Now a tall and broad-shouldered man, he wore the formal red armor of the Senju clan leader, but his face was a mask of stunned, disbelieving joy. Tears were already welling in his dark, kind eyes. "Naruto?" he whispered, as if afraid the vision would disappear. "Is it really you?" Before Naruto could answer, a second figure appeared on the riverbank with the instantaneous flicker of a teleportation jutsu. It was Tobirama, no longer a boy, but a man. His white hair was longer, his features sharper, and the red markings on his face seemed etched deeper. His red eyes widened almost imperceptibly as he took in the sight of Naruto, alive and real. But it was Naruto's appearance that shocked him most. One moment, Naruto was sitting on the rock in the middle of the river. The next, in a flash of yellow indistinguishable from his own, he was standing on the riverbank directly in front of Hashirama. Tobirama froze, his analytical mind screeching to a halt. It was the Flying Thunder God technique. His technique. A jutsu he had only perfected in the last year, a secret of the highest order known to no one but himself. And this man, who had been gone for 6 years, had just used it with a casual mastery that surpassed his own. The seed of suspicion, which had lain dormant for years, sprouted anew, sharp and confusing. "So," Tobirama said, his voice strained, masking his shock with his usual crisp tone. The whispers were true. A wandering sage with hair like the sun. "I should have known." Hashirama, oblivious to his brother's inner turmoil, let out a sob that was half laugh, half cry, and rushed forward to envelop Naruto in a bone-crushing hug. "You came back. You came back. I knew you would." Naruto smiled, a wide, genuine grin that felt like it could light up the sky as he hugged his friend. "Hey, Hashirama. Tobirama. It's been a while." 6 years is a long time for see you later, Hashirama said, finally releasing him. He looked at Naruto and saw the change. The boy he knew was gone, replaced by a man whose eyes held the calm, quiet wisdom of someone who had seen the world. "You've changed." "So have you," Naruto said warmly. "You look like a proper clan leader." From the opposite riverbank, 2 more figures emerged. Madara Uchiha stood foremost, his presence as sharp and commanding as ever, clad in his iconic purple armor. His Mangekyo Sharingan blazed. Beside him, slightly in his shadow, was a younger man with the same sharp Uchiha features and a fierce, protective gaze. Izuna Uchiha. Alive and unharmed. The wandering sage, Madara's voice, cold and clear, carried across the water. "You return after all these years and presume to push us, as if we are still children playing by the river?" "Maybe we are," Naruto called back, his tone devoid of challenge. "We're just playing a more dangerous game now." He looked at the 4 men, the 4 pillars of the future, and decided to cut through the posturing. "I didn't come back to force your hand. A peace held at the edge of a blade is no peace at all. It's just a ceasefire. I know that now." He let a fraction of his new, unified power flow outwards. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. A pressure that settled over the valley, so immense and so absolute that the river itself seemed to fall silent. "My power isn't a threat," Naruto stated, his voice holding an unshakable authority. "It's a shield. It's here to create a space where you can talk without fear of betrayal, without your clan's pride forcing you into a fight you no longer wish to have. The daggers don't matter anymore, because no dagger can pierce this shield." He let the pressure recede. "The choice is still yours. It always was. But I wanted you to know that the dream you both shared isn't just a fantasy. In my travels, I've seen it. Small villages, hidden in the mountains, nestled in valleys. Places where the Hatake and the Sarutobi have set aside their rivalries to build a common wall. Places where smaller clans have unified for mutual protection, creating communities. They are not as grand or as powerful as your clans, but they are proof. Proof that your dream is possible. That it is the natural course of things. He looked at Hashirama, whose eyes were wide with a new, fierce hope. He looked at Madara, whose mangekyo spun as he processed this new information. The idea that others had already achieved a version of their dream was a challenge to his pragmatism. The 6 years of quiet have softened the hatred in your clans, Naruto continued. Your people are tired of war. They are ready for peace. The question is, are their leaders brave enough to give it to them? He turned to his oldest friend. Hashirama, send the message. Tell the elders of both clans that there will be a summit. Right here. In 1 week. Then he turned to Madara. And you, Madara, will come. You and Izuna. You will come because you are not cowards, and because Naruto Uzumaki has invited you to a negotiation where he guarantees, with his life, that the only weapons used will be words. He had not returned as an ally of the Senju or an enemy of the Uchiha. He had returned as a third power, a neutral force whose will could no longer be denied. The joy of the reunion was over. The hard work of building a village was about to begin. The first leaf. The week leading up to the summit was the quietest the Land of Fire had been in a century. The news, delivered by Hashirama and Madara to their clans, was met not with outrage, but with a weary, cautious acceptance. The 6-year truce had done its work. A generation of children had grown up not knowing the taste of war, and their parents were reluctant to force it upon them. The old guard, men like Butsuma Senju and Tajima Uchiha, whose identities were forged in eternal conflict, had found their philosophies increasingly at odds with the prolonged peace. In the absence of battle, their hardline stances lost traction. Leadership naturally shifted to the architects of the truce, their sons, who had proven they could maintain stability. Butsuma had retired, ceding control to Hashirama, while Tajima had passed away from an old battle wound that never truly healed, leaving a proud but pragmatic Madara to lead the Uchiha. The era of the fathers was over, the era of the sons had begun. The summit was held on the Senju side of the Naka River, in a clearing of Hashirama's design. Using his Makuten, he hadn't built a fortress. He had grown a single, colossal tree, its branches forming a vast, leafy canopy. Beneath it, a simple, round table and chairs, also grown from living wood, awaited them. It was a testament to his dream, a meeting sheltered by nature, with no walls to hide behind. Naruto stood at the edge of the clearing, a silent, watchful guardian. His presence was the only security needed. The Senju delegation arrived first, Hashirama, his expression hopeful, and Tobirama, his face a mask of scientific curiosity, his eyes darting towards Naruto, trying to deconstruct the impossible teleportation he had witnessed. Then came the Uchiha. Madara walked with a confident, regal stride, his mangekyo active but his posture non-aggressive. Beside him, Izuna's gaze was sharp and suspicious, his hand never far from his sword. They sat. For the first time, the leaders of the two most powerful clans in the world sat at the same table to build a future. My dream, Hashirama began, his voice filled with a lifetime of hope, is of a village. A place where our clans are no longer Senju and Uchiha, but citizens of the same home. Where our children can grow up as classmates, not enemies. Where our strength is used not to destroy each other, but to protect our home, our families. Our shared will for peace. A noble sentiment, Madara stated, his voice even. But a village needs structure. Law. Who would lead? How would power be shared to ensure one clan does not simply dominate the other under a new banner? We would have a leader, Tobirama interjected, ever the pragmatist. One chosen by the people of the village, based on merit and the will of the majority. A Hokage, a fire shadow, to protect them. And I believe, Hashirama said, looking directly at Madara, his expression sincere, that the first Hokage should be you, Madara. The statement stunned everyone. Izuna gasped, his hand flying to his sword. Tobirama shot to his feet in protest, a harsh brother. Escaping his lips. But Madara simply stared, his mangekyo spinning as he searched for the angle, the deception. He found none. He found only the genuine, foolish, and absolute trust of his oldest friend. Naruto smiled from his position by the tree. See? He said, his voice reaching all of them. It's not about power. It's about trust. The foundation of this village isn't rock or wood. It's this. This moment. He stepped forward. In my travels, I learned a name for a place like this. A place hidden by the trees, sheltered by the leaves. They call it Konohagakure no Sato. The village hidden in the leaves. Hashirama's eyes lit up, repeating the name as if it were a prayer. Konoha. Madara looked at Hashirama's outstretched hand, then at Naruto's calm, knowing smile. He thought of the endless cycle of hatred, of the children sent to die, and of the strange, compelling logic of the wandering sage who had seen a different way. He thought of the glory of his clan, not as conquerors, but as the honored protectors of this new, impossible dream. Slowly, deliberately, Madara Uchiha reached across the table. His hand, clad in a purple gauntlet, clasped Hashirama's. A pact was sealed. A village was born. And in the quiet shade of a giant tree, the history of the world changed forever. The growing tree. The handshake between Madara and Hashirama was not the end of the struggle, but the beginning of a new one. The war of swords and fire had ended, the war of logistics, politics, and deeply ingrained prejudice had just begun. In the months that followed, the land surrounding the Naka River was transformed. Under Hashirama's guidance, a forest erupted. His Mukuten, refined and controlled after years of Naruto's mentorship, didn't just create a sprawl of trees, it sculpted a village. Houses grew from the earth, their timbers warm and living. Roads were cleared by massive, gentle wooden constructs. A great wall of intertwined, resilient wood rose to encircle their burgeoning home. It was a marvel of creation, a village literally born from the will for peace. The Senju and Uchiha began the slow, awkward process of cohabitation. Families who had spent generations killing each other were now neighbors. The first few weeks were fraught with tension. A dispute over property lines could escalate into a standoff with drawn kunai. A child's playground squabble could bring two furious, Sharingan-blazing parents face to face with two grimly determined Senju. It was in these moments that the new leadership proved its worth. Hashirama would descend upon disputes with his booming laugh and earnest pleas, his sheer, overwhelming sincerity often disarming the conflict before it could begin. Madara, in turn, established the Uchiha as the village's keepers of order. The Uchiha military police force, with its fan-like crest, became a common sight, their sharp eyes and stricter interpretation of the newly drafted laws providing a hard edge to Hashirama's soft diplomacy. They were the two pillars, balancing each other perfectly. Naruto took on an unofficial role. He was the village's guardian spirit, a figure of immense power who belonged to no single clan. He would spend his days walking the half-finished streets, often with a gaggle of children from various clans trailing behind him, mesmerized by his stories of faraway lands and his simple, harmless transformation jutsu. When a conflict arose that even Hashirama's idealism and Madara's authority couldn't solve, Naruto would appear. He wouldn't take sides. He would simply listen, then offer a piece of simple, irrefutable wisdom that cut to the heart of the matter, forcing both parties to see the foolishness of their old hatreds. He was the village's conscience, its ultimate mediator. Tobirama, meanwhile, was in his element. He became the village's architect of systems. He designed the mission ranking system, established the criteria for the Shinobi Academy, and drafted the first set of village laws. He was a whirlwind of pragmatic efficiency, creating the bureaucratic skeleton upon which the village's spirit could thrive. Yet, in his private moments, his mind constantly returned to Naruto. The Flying Thunder God technique remained an impossible paradox, a puzzle he couldn't solve. He would watch Naruto from his office window, seeing him not as a threat, but as the ultimate scientific anomaly. The drive to understand him was a quiet obsession. As Konoha grew, other clans, drawn by the promise of stability, began to arrive. The Sarutobi, masters of fire style, pledged their loyalty, followed by the Akimichi, Nara, and Yamanaka, their unique clan techniques adding new layers of strength to the village. The dream was becoming a reality. But the world outside the land of fire was not celebrating. A messenger hawk arrived one afternoon from the land of wind, carrying a scroll for the Hokage's office. It was from the acting Kage, the man Naruto had confronted years ago. The scroll detailed how the other great nations were reacting to Konoha's formation. They saw it not as a beacon of peace, but as a terrifying consolidation of power. The unification of the Senju and Uchiha, the two most powerful clans in the world, had created a military superpower that dwarfed all others. In the land of Earth, the stubborn and proud shinobi clans were banding together, forming a new village amidst the rocks, Iwagakure. In the storm-racked mountains of the northeast, the A clan and others were unifying to create Kumagakure. The world was not following Konoha's example of peace, it was arming itself in fear of Konoha's strength. That evening, the four founders stood atop the highest point of the village, a cliff face that would one day bear the faces of the Hokage, and looked down at their creation. The lights of hundreds of homes twinkled below, a sea of warmth and life. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Hashirama said, his voice thick with emotion. "It is a start," Madara replied, his arms crossed, though a note of pride was evident in his tone. The work is far from over, Tobirama stated, ever the realist. The other nations are mobilizing. They see us as a threat. Let them, Naruto said, his gaze fixed on the village below. We didn't build this place to conquer the world. We built it to protect what's precious. He looked at his friends, at the men who had, against all odds, built this impossible dream. The world will see, in time. This tree we've planted. Its roots are deep, and its branches will shelter many. The age of warring states is over. The age of the villages has begun. The four of them stood in silence, four pillars of a new era, united in purpose. The village was safe, the internal conflicts were healing, but on the horizon, the storm clouds of a new, larger conflict were gathering. Their dream had been realized, but now, they would have to fight the entire world to protect it. The First Council. The first true test of the village's fledgling government came with the issue of leadership. In a council meeting attended by the heads of all the clans who had joined Konoha, Hashirama, true to his word, formally nominated Madara for the position of first Hokage. Madara stood before the assembled clans, his presence commanding. He looked at Hashirama's earnest face, at the suspicious glares from the Senju-allied clans, and at the hopeful expressions of his own Uchiha. I am honored by this nomination, Madara began, his voice echoing in the quiet council chamber. It is a testament to the trust our Hokage places in the Uchiha clan. He paused, letting the words sink in. And it is for that reason that I must decline. He turned to face the council. The Hokage must be a figure of unity. A leader chosen not to appease a former rival, but one who holds the faith of all the people. That leader is not me. Not yet. The wounds of our wars are still too fresh. He looked at Hashirama. The man who dreamed this village into existence, whose power gives it life and shelter, is the only man who can be its first shadow. I, and the Uchiha clan, cast our vote for Hashirama Senju. It was another brilliant move. It solidified Madara as a statesman, one who put the village's stability above his own ambition, all while cementing Hashirama's authority and placing the Uchiha in a position of noble sacrifice. The vote was unanimous. Hashirama Senju was declared the first Hokage. With the leadership settled, the next question was Naruto. He held no clan affiliation, yet possessed power that dwarfed them all. It was Tobirama who proposed a solution. He cannot be part of the standard shinobi hierarchy, he argued. His power and his unique position place him outside of it. I propose the creation of a new role, the Guardian Sage of Konoha. The title was met with murmurs of approval. It was fitting. As Guardian Sage, Tobirama continued, his duty would be to the village itself, not to any single clan or even to the Hokage. He would be a supreme advisor, an ambassador to the other Baijuu, and the ultimate deterrent against external threats. He would operate outside the chain of command, his council valued, but his actions his own. The council agreed. Naruto, the man from another time, was given a title that perfectly encapsulated his role, a protector who stood apart, ensuring the dream they had all invested in would not fail. A quiet moment. A year passed. Konoha was no longer a frantic construction site but a thriving, bustling village. The raw wood of new buildings had weathered, and the streets were filled with the sounds of commerce, children's laughter, and the steady, rhythmic hum of a community at peace. One evening, Naruto found Hashirama sitting atop the still unmarked cliff overlooking the village, a wineskin in his hand and a contented, almost goofy smile on his face. Naruto. Come, sit. Hashirama boomed, patting the rock beside him. Look at it. Just look at it. We actually did it. Naruto sat, accepting the offered wineskin and taking a small sip. We did, he agreed, a genuine warmth spreading through his chest. It's even better than I imagined. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery colors. You know, Hashirama began, a new, more serious tone in his voice. The final arrangements have been made. My father and the Uzumaki elders agreed on it years ago, but now it is time. He took a deep breath. I am to be married. To a princess from your clan, Naruto. Uzumaki Mito. Naruto nearly choked on his drink. Mito? Wow. That's great, Hashirama. Congratulations. A whirlwind of thoughts spun through his head. Mito Uzumaki, the first Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails in Konoha. His predecessor. He was meeting history head-on. It is great, Hashirama agreed, though a thoughtful frown creased his brow. It will cement the alliance between Konoha and the Uzumaki, a vital bond for our village's security. And they say she is a formidable kunoichi, and very beautiful, he sighed, then turned to Naruto, his expression earnest and concerned. But it makes me think. About you. Me? Naruto asked, confused. Yes, you. Hashirama leaned closer, his voice dropping as if sharing a great secret. You are our guardian sage. A legend. But you are also a man, Naruto. A man who spends his nights walking the village alone. When are you going to find a nice girl and settle down? Build a home? Have a family? Naruto blinked, completely blindsided. Well, I've been kind of busy, you know? With the Baijuu, and the village, and stuff. He has you there, Kit. Kurama's voice rumbled with amusement in his mind. Your social life is pathetic. Naruto's face flushed. For a second, an image of cherry blossom pink hair flashed in his mind, followed by another of gentle lavender eyes. A pang of a loss he couldn't name, from a future he had left behind, struck him. Don't give me that look, Hashirama said, misinterpreting Naruto's expression. You are a great man. Any woman in this village would be honored. What about that fiery Yamanaka girl who always seems to be coincidentally on patrol whenever you are near the marketplace? Or that quiet Hyuga who blushes every time you say hello? You must have noticed. I hadn't, Naruto stammered, feeling his face grow hotter. He was a war hero, a godlike sage who had communed with ancient beasts and stood down armies. And yet, a simple conversation about romance had him more flustered than facing down Kaguya. You are hopeless, Hashirama sighed dramatically, slumping his shoulders. I worry about you, my friend. You carry the weight of the world, but who helps you carry your own? You need someone. Everyone does. Naruto looked at his friend's genuinely worried face and couldn't help but laugh, the sound echoing over the quiet valley. The tension broke, replaced by a shared, easy camaraderie. All right, I get it. I'll keep an eye out. See that you do. Hashirama grinned, clapping him on the back. They sat there as the stars began to appear, two friends looking over the world they had built. One was about to start a family, to put down roots and secure his legacy. The other, a man out of time, could only smile and watch, forever the guardian, forever alone. And as they sat there, a messenger hawk descended from the twilight sky, a scroll tied to its leg. It was from the land of iron. The first cage summit was about to begin, and the quiet moment was over. A council of shadows. The journey to the land of iron was a stark contrast to any Naruto had taken before. In his years of pilgrimage, he had moved as a ghost, a solitary figure against the vastness of the world. Now, he traveled as part of a delegation representing a nation, their every step carrying the weight of their village's future. The Konoha delegation was small, but its power was undeniable. Hashirama, as Hokage, walked with a quiet gravity that had replaced his youthful boisterousness, though his kind eyes still held a spark of hope. Tobirama, ever the pragmatist, was a silent, watchful presence, his senses constantly scanning their surroundings for threats. Naruto, in his official capacity as guardian sage, walked beside them, a calm anchor in the sea of tension. They were accompanied by a small, elite guard. Among them was a woman whose presence Naruto found himself noticing more than he expected. She was tall and athletic, with dark, straight hair and the sharp, intelligent eyes of the Senju clan. Her armor was practical, her movements economical and precise, and she carried an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. This was Toka Senju, Hashirama and Tobirama's aunt, a renowned master of genjutsu and one of the most respected shinobi in the clan. At 24, she was a veteran of countless battles, her skill second only to the Senju brothers themselves. She was also one of the few people in the village who didn't treat Naruto like a fragile deity or a ticking time bomb. I confess, I am curious, Guardian Sage, Toka said one evening as they made camp, her voice clear and direct as she approached the fire where Naruto was watching the flames. Hashirama speaks of you as a savior. My nephew Tobirama speaks of you as a scientific impossibility. Which is it? Naruto looked up, surprised by her directness. I'm just Naruto, he said with a small smile. Just Naruto doesn't single-handedly rout the A-clan and then disappear for 6 years, only to return with the power to unify the two most powerful clans in the world, she countered, her gaze sharp and analytical. The stories of your travels are the most popular tales in the tea houses, you know. The wandering sage who tamed the desert beast and quieted the weeping giant. You have become a legend. They're just stories, Naruto deflected, feeling a faint blush creep up his neck. Are they? Toka asked, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. I have a feeling the truth is even more unbelievable. She gave a curt nod. Rest well. Tomorrow we enter the land of iron. Their samurai are particular. She walked away, leaving Naruto with the distinct impression that he had just been thoroughly dissected and found wanting, yet intriguing. The summit was held in a stark, iron-forged fortress, a monument to the land of iron's unbending neutrality. The atmosphere within the grand hall was colder than the snow-swept mountains outside. The other four kage, Reto of the sand, Ishikawa of the stone, Byakuran of the mist, and I of the cloud, regarded the Konoha delegation with a mixture of fear and animosity. The meeting began with accusations. The Tsuchikage accused Konoha of expansionism. The Reikage accused them of disrupting the balance of power. The central, unspoken issue was the Baijuu. Konoha possesses the 9 tails, the most powerful of the beasts, the kage, Reto stated, his voice as dry as the desert wind. This is an imbalance we cannot accept. For there to be peace, there must be parity. The tailed beasts must be distributed among our villages as military deterrents. You mean as weapons? Hashirama countered, his voice heavy with sorrow. Call them what you will, the first Reikage, boomed, his massive arms crossed. They are power, and that power must be shared, or it will be taken. Before Hashirama could respond with another plea for trust, Naruto stepped forward from his position behind the Hokage. I have met your weapons, Naruto said, his voice calm but resonating with an ancient power that silenced the room. I have spoken with Shukaku in his lonely prison. I have shielded Isobu from those who would hunt him. I have faced Son Goku's pride and earned Kokuo's respect. I have freed Chomei, healed Saiken, and stood with Matatabi and Gyuki against your own shinobi, Reikage Dono. He let his gaze sweep over the 4 stunned kage. They are not mindless beasts. They are living, thinking beings, with names, fears, and pride. They are the children of the Sage of 6 Paths. To treat them as mere tools of war is a path that leads only to ruin. It will create a cycle of hatred that will poison this world for generations to come. He was speaking not just to them, but to the ghosts of a future he had already lived. You speak of balance, Naruto continued. But the balance you seek is one of fear, a world where everyone has a Baijuu bomb pointed at their neighbor. I propose a different path. He looked at Hashirama, who nodded in understanding. Konoha will help you. We will help you subdue the Baijuu that roam your lands. Not to enslave them, but to find human partners for them, as I have with Kurama. To create Jinchuriki who are respected guardians, not feared weapons. We will teach you the art of cooperation, not domination. He was offering them not a weapon, but a new philosophy. A way to achieve the power they craved without sacrificing their humanity. The kage stared at him, their minds reeling. It was a radical, insane idea. But it was presented by a man who was living proof that it could work. The summit ended without a formal agreement, but the seeds of a new world order had been sown. The kage returned to their villages with Naruto's impossible offer weighing on their minds. The bonds of politics and the heart. The first kage summit, while not resolving the issue of the Baijuu, had fundamentally altered the political landscape. Konoha had positioned itself not as a conqueror, but as a reluctant superpower willing to share its greatest secret, the philosophy of cooperation. It was a long-term strategy, one that left the other villages wary but intrigued. Back in Konoha, life settled into a new rhythm. Hashirama's wedding to Mito Uzumaki was an event that cemented the village's most crucial alliance. Mito was every bit the princess she was said to be, graceful, intelligent, and possessing a chakra so potent and refined that even Tobirama was impressed. She and Hashirama were a perfect match, their shared will for peace and stability a powerful force. Naruto found an unexpected friend in the new Hokage's wife. As a fellow Uzumaki and a powerful censor, Mito was one of the few people who could begin to comprehend the nature of his existence. Your chakra, she said to him one day as they sat in the Hokage's garden, it feels ancient. Like a story that's already been written. And yet, she smiled, a knowing, gentle expression in her eyes, it feels like the ink is still wet. As if you are rewriting it as you go. Naruto just grinned, recognizing a kinship that went beyond their shared clan name. His interactions with Toka Senju also became more frequent. She was often assigned as a high-level guard for diplomatic meetings or as a commander for sensitive missions, roles that frequently put her in Naruto's orbit. She remained direct and analytical, her sharp mind constantly probing his defenses, both verbal and physical. They developed a rapport built on grudging respect and a shared dedication to the village's protection. At the same time, another political consideration was brought to the forefront. Madara, seeking to further solidify the Uchiha's place within the village structure, began to arrange strategic marriages for the main family members of his clan. He approached Naruto one evening, his expression impassive. Guardian Sage, Madara began, his tone formal. The strength of this village is built on the bonds between our clans. The Senju and Uzumaki are now formally tied. The Uchiha must do the same, to ensure our commitment to this new era is seen as absolute. He paused. I have a cousin. Satsuki Uchiha. She is a powerful kunoichi, head of her own squad within the police force. She is respected, intelligent, and fiercely loyal to the village. A marriage between you, the symbol of the village's spirit, and a prominent Uchiha would silence the last of the dissenters in my clan. It would be the ultimate symbol of unity. Naruto was stunned into silence. Another marriage proposal. This one not born of a friend's well-meaning concern, but of cold, hard political strategy. Before he could formulate a response, the alarms began to blare throughout the village. A panicked-looking shinobi appeared in a swirl of leaves. Hokage-sama. Naruto-sama. It's an attack. A large, unidentified force is approaching from the north, moving with incredible speed. The peaceful era of construction was over. The first great test of the village hidden in the leaves had begun. The world was no longer content to simply watch. It was coming to challenge their dream. The first siege. The blare of the village alarms was a sound no one in Konoha had ever heard before. It was a harsh, piercing cry that shattered the peaceful afternoon, a brutal reminder that the walls they had built were not just a symbol of unity, but a necessity for survival. Madara's political proposition evaporated in the sudden, electric tension. The four founders, Hashirama, Madara, Tobirama, and Naruto, converged instantly, their years of battlefield instinct overriding the new diplomacy. They met not in the Hokage's office, but in the command center Tobirama had designed beneath it, a room of maps and communication scrolls. Report. Tobirama's voice was sharp, cutting through the initial chaos as reports flooded in from the perimeter sensors. A large force, Hokage-sama. A sensor from the Yamanaka clan called out, his hands pressed to a crystal ball. At least 1,000 strong. Moving fast. Their chakra signatures are chaotic. A mix of dozens of smaller clans. Naruto closed his eyes, extending his own senses, far more vast and precise than any other. He felt the wave of approaching chakra, a messy, violent tide of aggression fueled by greed and fear. They weren't a great nation. This was an alliance of convenience, a coalition of the resentful, clans who felt left out of the new world order, who saw Konoha's peace as a threat to their own mercenary way of life. But within that chaotic mess, Naruto felt two signatures that made Kurama stir in his gut. They were sharp and malicious, tainted with a familiar, corrupting echo of Baijuu chakra. The gold and silver brothers, Kurama growled in his mind. Kinkaku and Ginkaku. Distant relatives of the Sage of Six Paths who, in their foolish pride, tried to capture and consume me centuries ago. They were eaten, but survived by feeding on the flesh of my stomach, absorbing a portion of my chakra. They are a disgrace. Kinkaku and Ginkaku, Naruto said aloud, his eyes snapping open. The name meant nothing to the others, but his tone carried a weight that silenced the room. They lead the charge. They wield fragments of Kurama's power and carry some of the Sage of Six Paths' treasured tools. They are the spearhead. A coalition of jackals, led by two rabid dogs, Madara sneered, his Sharingan spinning with contempt. They see our peace as weakness. We must meet them with overwhelming force. Annihilate them at the gates. Let their fate be a message to any others who would challenge us. No, Madara, Hashirama countered, his face grim. This is our first test as a unified village. We must show the world that we are protectors, not conquerors. We defend, we subdue, but we do not slaughter. We need to understand why they have come. We must capture their leaders. Capture them? Madara scoffed. They have declared war on us, Hashirama. This is not a negotiation. Enough, Tobirama said, his finger tracing lines on the large map of the village. Your philosophies can be debated later. Right now, we need a strategy. His gaze was cold and logical. The enemy's strength is in their numbers and their unorthodox combination of jutsu. Their weakness is their lack of a unified command structure outside the two brothers. They will be a chaotic wave. We will break them on a structured defense. He began issuing orders with crisp, rapid-fire efficiency. Madara, you and the Uchiha police force will act as our rapid response. Let them crash against the main wall, then you will strike from the flanks. Your objective is to shatter their command and sow chaos. Izuna, your squad will support your brother. Hashirama, you will command the main defensive line. Reinforce the walls with your Mukuten. Use your wood golems to intercept their heaviest hitters. Toka, he glanced at his aunt, take your Genjutsu squad to the east wall. I want their right flank blinded and fighting ghosts by the time Madara engages. He turned to a Sarutobi clan member. Have your units ready with wide-range fire jutsu to counter any mass Earth-style attacks. He had a plan for every contingency, a counter for every move. Finally, all eyes turned to Naruto. The brothers are the primary threat, Tobirama stated. Their power is unknown, but your assessment suggests they are the key to breaking the assault. What is your role, Guardian Sage? I'll handle them, Naruto said simply. They're an echo of a past I understand all too well. Keep them off the wall. I'll deal with them personally. There were no more arguments. The plan was set. The leaders dispersed, and a wave of calm, deadly purpose spread through the village. This was no longer a collection of clans, it was a single, unified military machine, and its gears were beginning to turn. The attack came with the fury of a tidal wave. 1,000 shinobi erupted from the northern forest, a chaotic mix of jutsu filling the air. Flaming arrows, spears of rock, and blades of wind slammed against the great wooden wall of Konoha. But the wall held, Hashirama standing atop it, his hands pressed to the living wood. Mukuten, wall of the 10,000 trees, he roared. The wall groaned and thickened, new branches sprouting and weaving together, reinforcing any damage the moment it was inflicted. Massive wooden golems, each the size of a house, lumbered forth from the gate, their powerful fists smashing into the front ranks of the attacking army. On the east flank, Toka Senju and her squad moved like ghosts. They stood atop the wall, their hands weaving a single, unified sign. Genjutsu, phantasmal pandemonium. A wave of invisible chakra washed over the enemy's right flank. To them, the world twisted. The ground turned to a swamp of grasping hands, their comrades morphed into horrific demons, and the sky rained down fire. They began fighting each other, their formations dissolving into a panicked, screaming mob. Toka watched with cold satisfaction, her skill turning the enemy's minds into her own personal weapons. From the west, Madara watched and waited. Patience, he commanded his squads, his Sharingan analyzing the flow of battle. He saw the main force commit, their focus entirely on the unbreakable wall and the giant wooden monsters. Now, he said, his voice a low growl. The Uchiha attacked. They didn't charge. They flowed. A wave of black and purple, moving with a synchronized, deadly grace. Madara was at their head, his hands forming a single sign. Fire style, great fire annihilation. A sea of flame, far more vast and controlled than the one he had unleashed against Naruto years ago, rolled across the battlefield, not aimed at the main army, but cutting off their retreat, turning their flank into an inescapable furnace. Izuna and the other squads plunged into the chaos, their Sharingan allowing them to navigate the melee with lethal precision, disabling and subduing the enemy with a terrifying efficiency. Atop the wall, Satsuki Uchiha, Madara's cousin and a respected squad leader, directed her own unit. Second platoon, suppress their archers with dragon fire. Third platoon, on me. We're breaking their vanguard. She moved with a sharp, confident grace, a testament to her lineage and her position. Her fireball jutsu was precise, her taijutsu, augmented by her Sharingan, a deadly dance. She was every bit the leader Madara had described. The coalition army, caught between an unbreakable wall, a mind-bending illusion, and a flanking inferno, began to buckle. Their initial charge had been broken, their chaotic energy no match for Konoha's coordinated, multi-layered defense. But the true threat had yet to be neutralized. Through the center of their own panicked army, two figures strode, untouched by the chaos. Kinkaku and Ginkaku, the gold and silver brothers, moved with an arrogant swagger. Kinkaku, the larger of the two, wielded a massive, ornate fan, while Ginkaku held a rope and a gleaming sword. Their faces were marked with the same whisker-like lines as Naruto, a grotesque parody. Pathetic, Kinkaku sneered, looking at his own faltering army. No matter. We just need to punch a hole for them. He waved his fan, the Bashozen, one of the treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths. Fire element. A torrent of intense flame, rivaling Madara's own, blasted towards the main gate. Before it could connect, a figure appeared in a flash of yellow light, landing silently between the blast and the gate. It was Naruto. He held up a single hand, and the flames parted around him as if hitting an invisible, immovable rock. The brothers stopped, their eyes widening. Well, Ginkaku hissed, his tongue flicking out like a snake's. Look what we have here. Another one. You have the stink of the nine tails on you, boy. More than you know, Naruto replied, his expression calm. He held up his hand, and a black, malleable staff, a truth-seeking orb, materialized in his grip. The sight of it made the brothers take an involuntary step back. It was a power they recognized from ancient legends. So the legends are true, Kinkaku growled, a greedy light in his eyes. The sage's power lives on. Good. We will take it from you, along with the beast in your belly. They charged. Ginkaku uncoiled the Kokenjo, the golden rope that could draw out a person's spirit word, while Kinkaku brandished the Shichi Seiken, the 7-star sword that could sever that word and curse the victim. They were fast, their movements augmented by the 9 tails chakra they possessed. But to Naruto, it was like watching children mimic a master. He flowed around their attacks, the black staff a blur as it deflected the cursed sword and batted away the ensnaring rope. "You're just borrowing that power," Naruto said, his voice laced with a strange pity as he easily dodged a swipe from Ginkaku. "You have no control. No harmony. You're just a cheap copy." "Silence," Kinkaku roared, and he transformed, a cloak of bubbling crimson chakra erupting around him, forming a single, powerful tail. He was tapping into the 9 tails power. The display, which would have terrified any other shinobi, only made Naruto sigh. "You think that's power?" He closed his eyes. "Kurama. Let's show them the real thing." A torrent of golden energy exploded from Naruto, so bright and overwhelming it outshone the sun. He entered his 6-path sage mode, the golden cloak adorned with the swirling Magatama, the truth-seeking orbs hovering behind him like a halo of miniature black holes. He looked not like a man, but like a myth made manifest. The Kinkaku and Ginkaku froze, their borrowed power sputtering in the face of the genuine article. The fragment of Kurama's chakra within them was screaming, cowering before its original, complete, and infinitely more powerful source. "This," Naruto said, his voice echoing with the power of a god, "is the 9 tails." He didn't even need to attack. He raised his hand, and a massive, golden chakra arm erupted from his back. It didn't strike. It simply opened its hand, and the sheer force of the chakra pressure it exerted was like a physical law of the universe. The treasured tools flew from the brothers' hands, clattering uselessly to the ground. Their crimson chakra cloaks were extinguished, snuffed out like candles. They stared, paralyzed with a terror so absolute it stole the air from their lungs. They had come seeking power, and they had found a god. "Your rampage is over," Naruto said calmly. He made a single, complex hand sign. Uzumaki art, adamantine sealing chains. Golden chains, glowing with a powerful Fuinjutsu script, erupted from the ground, wrapping around the 2 brothers, binding them completely and sealing their chakra away. They fell to the ground, unconscious and utterly defeated. The entire battlefield fell silent. The coalition army, their leaders neutralized, their formations shattered, broke completely. They dropped their weapons and fled, a panicked mob disappearing back into the forest. The first siege of Konoha was over. Naruto stood over the defeated brothers, the golden light of his sage mode receding. The village was safe. But as he looked at the smoking craters and the wounded being carried from the walls, he knew this was just the beginning. The world now knew that the village hidden in the leaves was not just a dream. It was a fortress. And its guardian was a power unlike any they had ever known. Chapter 8, The Aftermath and a New Journey. The victory was absolute. The defeat of the coalition army was so swift and so decisive that it sent a shudder through the shinobi world. Konoha hadn't just defended itself, it had demonstrated a terrifying unity and an overwhelming power that silenced all but the most foolish detractors. The sight of Madara Uchiha's sea of flames working in concert with Hashirama Senju's living walls, all while Naruto Uzumaki single-handedly neutralized 2 pseudo-jinchuriki, painted a picture of a power that no single nation could hope to match. The immediate aftermath was a period of unprecedented peace. The other fledgling villages, having witnessed the fate of the coalition, ceased their aggressive posturing. The Cage Summit's offer of cooperation, once seen as a radical, idealistic notion, now looked like a very pragmatic alternative to facing Konoha's wrath. The world was holding its breath, waiting to see what the leaf would do next. Within the village, the victory had a profound, galvanizing effect. The shared experience of defending their homes had forged a bond between the clans that months of peaceful cohabitation could not. An Uchiha medic tending to a wounded Senju, a Hyuga providing lookout for an Inuzuka tracker, these were no longer political gestures, but the natural actions of comrades. The abstract concept of the village had been cemented in their hearts with the shared struggle. For the first time, they were not Senju or Uchiha living in a new settlement. They were shinobi of Konoha. With the immediate threat gone and the village settling into a confident new rhythm, Naruto felt a familiar pull, a sense of unfinished business that had been with him since he first arrived in this era. He was an Uzumaki, yet he had never set foot in the home of his clan. He had seen the swirling red crest on flags and armor, he had felt a kinship with Mito, but he had never seen the land of whirlpools, never walked the streets of Uzushio Gakure. It felt like a missing piece of his own soul. He found Hashirama in the newly constructed Hokage office, a grand room with a large window overlooking the entire village. The first Hokage was, as usual, buried under a mountain of paperwork, a pained expression on his face that suggested he would rather be fighting 1,000 enemies than a single stack of mission reports. Hashirama, Naruto began, and the Hokage looked up, his face breaking into a relieved grin at the interruption. Naruto. Come in, come in. Save me from this wooden prison. He gestured to his desk. I need to talk to you about something, Naruto said, his tone more serious. The village is stable. The immediate threats have been neutralized. I think it's time for me to go on a journey. Hashirama's smile faded slightly. Another one? But you just got back. This one is different, Naruto explained. It's not a pilgrimage. It's a homecoming. I want to go to Uzushio Gakure. I want to see the home of my mother's clan. I need to understand that part of myself. Hashirama's expression softened into one of deep understanding. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the thriving village below. I understand, my friend. Of course you must go. After everything you have done for us, for this village, you have more than earned the right to find your own peace. He turned back to Naruto, a familiar, thoughtful glint in his eye. But you are the guardian sage of Konoha. You cannot travel as a simple wanderer. You must travel as a diplomat, an emissary of our village, to formally strengthen our ties with our most vital ally. Before Naruto could protest, the door opened and Madara stepped in, holding a mission scroll. He paused, sensing the serious atmosphere. Am I interrupting? No, Madara, you are just in time, Hashirama said, his grin returning, this time with a hint of mischief. Naruto has decided to take a diplomatic trip to Uzushio Gakure. To formally connect with his heritage and strengthen our alliance. Madara raised an eyebrow, his gaze shifting to Naruto. He immediately saw the political implications. An excellent idea. The Uzumaki are masters of Fuinjutsu. A formal, public alliance, cemented by their friendship with our guardian sage, would be a powerful deterrent to the other villages. It shows our reach extends beyond even the land of fire. Naruto sighed. He had just wanted to go on a personal journey, and already it was being turned into a political mission. It is a long journey by sea, Hashirama continued, the gears of his mind clearly turning. It would not be right for you to travel alone. You should have an escort. One that represents the core of our village. He looked from Madara to Naruto. A delegation. One that represents both the Senju and the Uchiha. Naruto saw where this was going and already felt a headache forming. Oh, no, he thought. A brilliant suggestion, Hashirama. Madara agreed instantly, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk touching his lips. He understood the game perfectly. A joint delegation would be the ultimate symbol of our unity to the Uzumaki, and by extension, to the world. A message that the Senju and Uchiha are now one will, one voice. Exactly. Hashirama boomed. And I know just the people. He looked at Naruto, his expression one of a friend trying to do him a great favor. My aunt, Toka, is our finest diplomat when she chooses to be, and one of our most skilled shinobi. She can represent the Senju. And Madara, he turned to his friend, your cousin Satsuki is the pride of the Uchiha police force. A respected leader. She would be a perfect representative for your clan. Madara gave a slow nod. Satsuki is an excellent choice. She is strong, loyal, and understands the importance of this mission. It is settled, then. Naruto stood there, trapped. He had envisioned a quiet, solitary trip. A chance for introspection. Instead, he was now the head of a diplomatic mission, saddled with two of the most formidable and politically significant women in the village. He knew exactly what Hashirama and Madara were doing. Hashirama, in his own clumsy, well-meaning way, was trying to set him up, to push him towards the settling down they had discussed. Madara, on the other hand, was playing a game of chess, using this opportunity to bind Naruto, the village's most powerful piece, even closer to the Uchiha through a potential marriage alliance. He was caught between his friend's political machinations and personal hopes for him. I don't need an escort, Naruto protested weakly. Nonsense, Hashirama declared. You are our guardian sage. It is a matter of prestige. It has been decided. Naruto looked at Hashirama's beaming face and Madara's cool, calculating gaze and knew he had already lost. He let out a long, suffering sigh. Fine. But we travel light, and we travel fast. Later that day, Naruto met his new traveling companions in the Hokage's office. Toka Senju stood with her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of duty and wry amusement. She understood the politics at play better than anyone. Beside her stood Satsuki Uchiha. She was as Madara had described, tall and confident, with the classic, sharp Uchiha features and eyes that held an intelligent, assessing light. Her long black hair was tied back in a high ponytail, and she wore the standard Uchiha flak jacket with a quiet, commanding pride. She looked at Naruto not with the awe of the other villagers, but with the cool appraisal of a fellow shinobi sizing up a mission partner. "Guardian Sage," Satsuki said, her voice calm and melodic, but with an underlying strength. She gave a formal bow. "It is an honor to accompany you. My clan understands the importance of this mission to the future of our village." "Just Naruto is fine," he replied, running a hand through his hair. "And let's be clear. This is a journey to my ancestral home. The diplomacy is a secondary objective." Toka chuckled softly. "Of course it is, just Naruto. But you cannot deny the opportunity this presents. Hashirama sees a friend in need of companionship. Madara sees a powerful alliance to be cemented. And we," she gestured between herself and Satsuki, "see a vital mission to ensure the continued stability of the home we have all fought to build." She gave him a sharp, playful smirk. "Try to keep up." Satsuki's lips quirked in a small smile. "Toka is correct. This is a mission of the highest importance. We will not be a burden to you. We are your partners in this." Naruto looked at the two women before him. One was a brilliant, sharp-tongued senju who could see right through him. The other was a proud, fiercely capable Uchiha who viewed him as a strategic asset. He had a feeling this trip was going to be anything but quiet. "This," Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, filled with undisguised mirth, "is going to be far more entertaining than fighting by Juu." "Shut up," Naruto muttered under his breath, a resigned smile on his face. The stage was set. The journey to the land of whirlpools was about to begin, and it promised to be a trial of diplomacy, politics, and a level of personal complexity that Naruto was utterly unprepared for. The diplomatic escort. The journey began at dawn. The trio departed from Konoha's main gate with little fanfare, their mission officially logged as a diplomatic outreach to a key ally. To the casual observer, they were three shinobi heading out on a routine assignment. But the combined power and political weight of the three individuals leaving the village could have constituted a declaration of war in another context. Naruto had insisted they travel light, foregoing the usual entourage of a diplomatic mission. He wanted speed, and more importantly, he wanted to avoid the suffocating formality that would inevitably come with a larger group. He had a personal goal, and he wasn't keen on having it buried under layers of political theater. The first few days were a journey over land, heading east towards the coast. They moved at a blistering pace, a speed that would have left even elite Jonin gasping for breath. They flowed through the trees, their movements a blur of silent, efficient grace. It was here that the initial dynamic between the three began to form. Naruto, with his vast sage senses, naturally took the lead, his awareness of their surroundings absolute. He would guide them around potential threats, bandit camps, territorial predators, and the occasional patrol from smaller clans, long before they became an issue. Satsuki, with her Uchiha training and the sharp perception of her Sharingan, fell into the role of tactical oversight. Her eyes missed nothing, the slightest disturbance in the foliage, the faintest trace of a chakra signature, a broken twig on the path. She was a silent, watchful guardian, her presence a constant assurance that no detail would be overlooked. Toka, in contrast, was the group's social catalyst. Where Satsuki was quiet and observant, Toka was engaging and provocative. She saw the journey not just as a mission, but as an opportunity to study the enigma that was Naruto Uzumaki. She filled the silence of their long treks with sharp questions and playful jabs, her intellect as keen as any blade. "So, just Naruto," she began on their second night, as they sat around a small, crackling campfire. Satsuki was methodically sharpening a kunai a short distance away, her posture alert but her attention clearly on their conversation. "You've traveled the world. You've seen the nascent forms of the other great villages. What makes you so certain our Konoha experiment will succeed where others might fail?" Naruto looked up from the fish he was roasting over the fire. "Because of the foundation," he answered simply. "The other villages are being formed out of fear. Fear of Konoha, fear of each other. They are alliances of necessity. Konoha was founded on a different principle. It was founded on a dream of trust." He looked at Satsuki, then back at Toka. "It was founded by two rivals, a Senju and an Uchiha, who chose to believe in each other. That's a foundation built on hope, not fear. It's stronger." Satsuki paused her sharpening, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "Trust is a fragile commodity, guardian sage. It can be easily broken. And it's hard to earn," Naruto agreed, nodding. "But anything worthwhile is. A peace built on mutual respect is harder to achieve than a peace built on mutual destruction, but it's the only one that lasts." He offered a piece of the cooked fish to Toka. "Besides, you're forgetting our secret weapon." Toka raised an eyebrow, accepting the fish. And what would that be? Your pet fox? Hashirama's sad puppy dog eyes? Naruto grinned. Ramen, he said with absolute seriousness. No one can stay angry while eating a good bowl of ramen. It's a scientific fact. Toka stared at him for a long moment, then let out a short, surprised laugh, the sound clear and melodic in the quiet forest. Satsuki, despite herself, cracked a small, almost imperceptible smile before returning to her kunai. In that moment, the formal titles of Guardian Sage, Senju Diplomat, and Uchiha Captain fell away, replaced by something simpler. They were three people, sharing a meal by a fire. The easy camaraderie did not mean the journey was without its tests. On the fourth day, as they passed through a narrow mountain pass, they were ambushed. A clan of rock shinobi, remnants of the coalition that had attacked Konoha, had been hiding in the region, preying on travelers. They were a disorganized but desperate force, and they saw the Konoha headbands as a prime target for revenge. Dozens of shinobi erupted from the rocks around them, hurling spears of stone and launching a volley of explosive tags. Predictable, Satsuki murmured, her Sharingan already active, its tomoe spinning as she analyzed the trajectory of every projectile. Fire style, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. She unleashed a flurry of small, controllable fireballs from her mouth, each one precisely intercepting an explosive tag in mid-air, causing a series of contained, harmless explosions far from their position. At the same time, Toka's hands flew through a series of intricate signs. Genjutsu, Mist of a Thousand Lies. A subtle, colorless chakra pulsed outwards. The attacking shinobi suddenly stopped, their eyes glazing over. They began to attack the rocks around them, screaming at imagined enemies, their ambush collapsing into a chaotic mess of friendly fire and confusion. Toka stood calmly, her expression one of focused disdain for such a crude assault. Naruto, meanwhile, hadn't moved from his spot. He simply watched the two women dismantle the entire ambush in a matter of seconds. Toka's genjutsu was a masterpiece of psychological warfare, turning the enemy's own aggression against them without a single physical blow. Satsuki's precision and power with her fire style was a beautiful, deadly dance. They were, without a doubt, two of the most capable kunoichi in the world. When the last of the rock shinobi had either fled or knocked themselves unconscious against a rock wall, a tense silence fell over the pass. Toka turned to Naruto, a playful, challenging glint in her eye. Well, Guardian Sage? Aren't you going to do something? Or were you content to let the escort handle the rough work? Why would I? Naruto asked with an easy shrug. You two had it handled. He gestured to the chaotic scene. You didn't need my help. You worked together perfectly. A Senju and an Uchiha. That's what this mission is all about, isn't it? Satsuki looked at Toka, a new, grudging respect in her eyes. The two women, who had been rivals by birth for their entire lives, had just acted as a flawless unit, their skills complementing each other perfectly. The implication in Naruto's words was not lost on them. He wasn't just their leader on this mission, he was their teacher. The rest of the journey to the coast was marked by a new dynamic. The playful jousting from Toka and the stoic silence from Satsuki were now layered with a shared understanding. They began to talk, to share stories of their training, of their clans, of their hopes for the new village. Naruto learned of Toka's fierce pride in the Senju name, but also of her deep weariness with the endless cycle of war and her genuine hope that her nephew's dream could finally break it. He learned of Satsuki's unwavering loyalty to Madara, but also of her quiet desire for the Uchiha to be known for their honor and protective skill, not just their power and their cursed eyes. In turn, Naruto shared stories of his own, carefully edited versions of his travels. He spoke of the beauty of the desert at dawn, the sorrow of the misty lakes, the pride of the mountains. He spoke of the Baiju not as monsters, but as lonely, misunderstood beings. He was showing them the world through his eyes, a world filled not just with conflict, but with a deep, powerful current of life and the potential for connection. By the time they reached the port town on the eastern coast, a bustling, salt-sprayed city that served as the gateway to the sea, the three of them were no longer just a diplomatic delegation. They were a team. A strange, unlikely team composed of a living legend, a sharp-witted Senju diplomat, and a proud Uchiha captain. They had found a balance, a rhythm. Naruto chartered a swift, sturdy ship, paying the gruff, sea-worn captain a handsome sum to ensure a direct and discreet passage. The moment they left the shore and the vast, blue expanse of the ocean opened up before them, Naruto felt a sense of profound anticipation. The journey to his past was about to begin in earnest. But for the first time, he wasn't walking into it alone. And he had a feeling that the two formidable women standing beside him were going to make this journey far more interesting than he could have ever imagined. The political mission was still there, a constant undercurrent, but something else was growing alongside it. A bond. Forged in the fires of shared experience and the quiet moments of a long road. And Naruto knew, with a certainty that had nothing to do with prophecy, that this bond would be just as important to the future of Konoha as any treaty or alliance. The unnavigable sea. The sea was a different kind of wilderness. It was vast, untamed, and held a power that made even the most arrogant shinobi feel small. Their ship, though sturdy, was a mere speck on the churning, gray-blue water. The first few days of the voyage were calm, the sun warm on their faces, the wind a steady hand in their sails. The trio found a new rhythm, one dictated by the roll of the ship and the endless horizon. Naruto spent hours at the bow, his eyes closed, not sleeping, but communing with the world in a way his companions were only just beginning to understand. He could feel the immense, ancient life that swam in the depths below, the flow of the ocean currents, the mood of the wind. It was a macro level of sage mode, a connection to the planet's very pulse. Toka and Satsuki used the time to train. The deck of the ship became their personal dojo. They sparred relentlessly, their movements a blur of senju grace and Uchiha precision. It was a fascinating dance of opposing styles. Toka's taijutsu was fluid and powerful, each strike carrying the weight of a river's current. Satsuki's was sharp and angular, her Sharingan allowing her to read and react with breathtaking speed, her every move a perfectly calculated counter. They were evenly matched, a fact that both frustrated and intrigued them. "Your movements are too rigid, Satsuki," Toka critiqued, deftly parrying a kick aimed at her head. "You see the attack, you analyze it, and you counter it. But you don't feel the flow. You are a rock in the stream, but the stream will always find a way around the rock. And your attacks are wasteful," Satsuki retorted, disengaging with a backflip. "You put too much power into feints, hoping to create an opening. A true opening is not created, it is seen. Your genjutsu is your greatest weapon because it forces your opponent to create those openings for you. In a pure taijutsu match, your style is inefficient." Their verbal spars were as sharp as their physical ones. Naruto would watch them, a small smile on his face. He saw not rivalry, but the forging of a powerful bond. They were sharpening each other, sanding down the rough edges of their clan-forged ideologies, creating something new in the process. Their peaceful journey was shattered on the fifth day. The sky turned a bruised, sickly purple, and the sea, which had been calm, began to heave and churn. A storm was upon them, a storm of unnatural ferocity. The ship's captain, a man who had sailed these seas for 50 years, paled. "This is no normal storm," he growled, his hands wide on the ship's wheel as a monstrous wave crashed over the bow. "This is the unnavigable sea. The waters around Uzushio. They say the island protects itself." He was right. Naruto could feel it. The storm was infused with a wild, chaotic chakra. It was a natural phenomenon amplified by 1,000 interlocking, ancient fuinjutsu arrays laid down over centuries, designed to destroy any ship that approached the land of whirlpools without permission. The famous whirlpools that gave the land its name were just the final, most visible layer of the defense. The true defense was the sea itself. "We have to turn back," the captain yelled over the howling wind. "The ship will be torn to pieces." "We're not turning back," Naruto said, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the roar of the storm. He walked to the bow, the wind whipping his cloak around him. "Are you mad, boy?" the captain roared. "Even a cage can't fight a hurricane." Naruto didn't answer. He closed his eyes and entered sage mode. The world transformed. He saw not just wind and water, but the swirling, chaotic lines of the fuinjutsu, the angry, agitated flow of the ocean's natural energy. It was a massive, complex knot of power. But to him, a master of sage arts and an Uzumaki by blood, it was not just chaos. It was a language. A very, very angry language. "Toka. Satsuki." Naruto called out. "I need a distraction." The two women didn't hesitate. They understood their role was not to fight the storm, but to give him the opening he needed. Satsuki's Sharingan spun, her eyes tracking the movement of a colossal rogue wave that was forming, threatening to capsize the ship. "Toka. Northeast, 40 degrees. A waterspout is forming within the wave." Toka's hands were already moving. Genjutsu, calm of the mirror sea. She didn't target the storm. She targeted the life within it. A massive, ancient sea creature, a leviathan that had been roused by the storm's chakra, was contributing its own rage to the tempest. Toka's illusion didn't try to control it. It simply projected an image of a calm, peaceful ocean into its primal mind, a feeling of serene tranquility. The leviathan's angry thrashing subsided, and the chaotic energy of the storm lessened by a fraction. It was a small change, but it was enough. At the same time, Satsuki unleashed a massive fireball, not at the wave, but at the waterspout forming within it. The intense heat caused a rapid change in air pressure, destabilizing the vortex and causing the wave to crest prematurely, crashing harmlessly a dozen yards from the ship. Their combined efforts, a masterpiece of teamwork, had bought Naruto the few precious seconds he needed. He slammed his palms onto the deck of the ship. He didn't try to fight the storm. He didn't try to overpower it. He joined it. He poured his own immense, sage-infused chakra into the water, not as an opposing force, but as a harmonizing one. He felt the angry, chaotic hum of the Uzumaki seals and responded with a calm, steady rhythm of his own. He was speaking to the ancient Fuinjutsu, using the language of his own bloodline. He was telling the storm that he was not an invader. He was a son, coming home. Slowly, miraculously, the sea around their ship began to calm. The howling wind softened to a whisper. The churning waves smoothed into a gentle swell. They were in a perfect circle of placid water, an eye of impossible tranquility in the midst of a raging hurricane. The ship sailed through the maelstrom, utterly untouched. The captain stared, his mouth agape, his hands frozen on the wheel. Toka and Satsuki looked at Naruto, who stood at the bow, his eyes still closed, a serene expression on his face, as if he were merely listening to a pleasant song. They had seen his power in battle. But this was something else entirely. This was not the power of a shinobi. This was the power of the world itself, responding to his will. An hour later, they broke through the storm front. The sky ahead was clear and blue, and on the horizon, a new sight came into view. An island, lush and green, surrounded by a series of massive, perfectly formed whirlpools that spun with a hypnotic, deadly grace. In the center of the island, a city rose, its architecture a breathtaking blend of elegant towers and sturdy, fortified walls, all of it covered in the faint, shimmering glow of countless sealing formulas. The air itself hummed with a powerful, protective chakra. This was Uzushio Gakure, the village hidden in the whirlpools. As their ship approached, a channel of calm water opened in the whirlpools, a gateway guiding them safely to shore. A delegation of red-haired shinobi was waiting for them on the docks. They wore light, practical armor over dark robes, the swirling red crest of their clan displayed proudly. Their expressions were not hostile, but intensely curious. The leader of the delegation, a man with a warm smile and eyes that crinkled at the corners, stepped forward. Konoha nin, he greeted them, his voice boisterous and friendly. We were wondering when you'd arrive. The sea told us a cousin was coming home. He looked directly at Naruto, his gaze filled with a mixture of awe and familial pride. Welcome to Uzushio Gakure, Naruto Uzumaki. Our leader, Lord Ashina, has been waiting a very long time to meet you. Naruto looked at the vibrant, powerful village, at the faces of the people who shared his bloodline, and felt a profound sense of coming home to a place he had never been. The village of spiraling tides. Stepping onto the docks of Uzushio Gakure was like stepping into another world, one that operated on a different frequency from the rest of the shinobi nations. The air hummed with a palpable, vibrant energy, a constant, low-level thrum of Fuinjutsu that was woven into the very stones of the city. For Satsuki, it was a disorienting sensation, a constant pressure of foreign chakra that made her Sharingan ache with the effort of trying to parse the millions of overlapping formulas. For Toka, a senju whose senses were distantly related to this energy, it felt like a powerful, chaotic symphony, almost overwhelming in its complexity. But for Naruto, it felt like coming home. The energy resonated with his own Uzumaki blood, a warm, welcoming hum that settled a deep and ancient part of his soul. The Uzumaki people were as vibrant as their village. Unlike the stoic Uchiha or the disciplined Senju, they were a loud, boisterous, and passionately expressive clan. The docks were a riot of activity, with red-haired fishermen laughing and shouting as they hauled in nets shimmering with iridescent fish, their arms covered in intricate sealing tattoos that pulsed with faint light. Children with the same fiery red hair chased each other through the streets, their games involving small, harmless explosive tags that would pop with flashes of colored smoke. It was a village that was not just protected by Fuinjutsu, it was a village that lived Fuinjutsu. The welcoming delegation, led by the cheerful man named Kaido, guided them through the bustling streets. Lord Ashina is holding a welcome banquet for you this evening, Kaido explained, his voice booming over the lively sounds of the city. But first, he wishes to speak with you, Naruto Dono. Alone. Naruto nodded, understanding. He turned to his companions. I'll meet you at the guest quarters later. Toka gave him a sharp, appraising look. Don't let our esteemed cousins talk you into anything foolish. Remember, you're a Konoha diplomat first. Her tone was light, but the underlying message was clear. Don't forget where your loyalties lie. Satsuki simply gave a curt nod, her eyes sweeping over the intricate seal work on the buildings around them. The defensive capabilities of this village are formidable, she stated, her analytical mind clearly impressed and slightly unnerved. Their mastery of barrier ninjutsu is unparalleled. As the women were escorted away, Kaido led Naruto towards the center of the village, towards a large, elegant tower that seemed to be the heart of the city's power. Lord Ashina was the one who sent the reply to the Senju all those years ago, Kaido said, his tone more subdued now. The prophecy you are a part of. It is a heavy burden, and a great hope for our clan. He did not tell the Senju everything. He wanted to meet you himself, to take your measure. They entered the tower and ascended to the highest chamber. It was a large, airy room, its walls lined with shelves holding thousands of scrolls. In the center, a man sat on a simple cushion, practicing calligraphy. He was old, his face a roadmap of deep wrinkles, and his long white hair was tied back in a simple knot. But his eyes, when he looked up, were as sharp and vibrant as any youth's, and they held a depth of wisdom that was almost staggering. A powerful, yet gentle chakra emanated from him. This was Ashina Uzumaki, the leader of the Uzumaki clan. So, Ashina said, his voice a warm, rasping sound like old parchment. The child of the prophecy returns to the home he has never known. Come, sit. He gestured to a cushion opposite him. Naruto sat, feeling strangely at ease in the presence of this legendary figure. You have my power, but not my chaos, Ashina observed, his gaze seeming to peer directly into Naruto's soul. You have tamed the fox. No. Not tamed. You have befriended him. A feat no one since the sage himself has managed. He smiled. The sea told me of your arrival. It said you did not fight its anger, but soothed it. An Uzumaki in truth, not just in name. I have had good teachers, Naruto replied honestly. As have we all, Ashina said. But the greatest lessons are the ones we learn ourselves. You went on a pilgrimage, did you not? You sought out the other Baijuo. I did, Naruto confirmed. And you did not seek to capture them, Ashina continued, his eyes twinkling. You sought to understand them. You are a strange one, Naruto Uzumaki. You wield a power that could bring the world to its knees, yet you use it to build bridges. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, why did you come here? To this island? To us? I came to understand my past, Naruto said, his voice quiet but firm. My mother. She was an Uzumaki. I wanted to see where she came from. Where I came from. Ashina nodded slowly, a profound sadness touching his features. Your mother. Kushina. Yes. I see her now. A faint echo in the river of time, he sighed. Your journey has been a long and lonely one, hasn't it? A man out of time, trying to mend a future that is not yet broken. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. You know? The Uzumaki are a clan of connections, Ashina explained, his voice taking on a mystical quality. Our Fuinjutsu is not just about sealing away demons or creating barriers. At its highest level, it is about sealing time itself. We cannot see the future, not with the clarity of an Uchiha's eye. But we can feel its echoes. We feel the ripples of great events as they travel backwards through the stream of time, especially those tied to our own bloodline. The day you arrived in this era, a great, silent tremor shook the seals in our deepest vaults. We knew something had changed. Something impossible. He stood up, his movement slow but steady. I believe your companions are settled. The banquet is prepared. Let us eat. We will talk more of this later. There are things you must see. Truths you must understand. His expression was warm, but his eyes held the weight of centuries. Welcome home, Naruto. Feasts and phantoms. The welcome banquet was an assault on the senses. The great hall in the central tower was filled with a joyous cacophony of laughter, music, and spirited conversation. Long tables were laden with exotic seafood, strange and wonderful fruits, and barrels of strong, sweet sake that flowed freely. The Uzumaki celebrated with the same passionate, unrestrained energy with which they lived. It was a stark contrast to the formal, restrained dinners of the Senju or the silent, suspicious meals of the Uchiha. Naruto, seated at the head table next to Lord Ashina, found himself the center of attention. He was toasted, cheered, and slapped on the back by dozens of red-haired cousins he had never met, each one with a boisterous personality and a seemingly endless supply of questions about his travels and his pet fox. For Naruto, who had spent most of his life as an outsider, the unconditional, familial acceptance was both overwhelming and deeply healing. Toka, seated to his left, handled the boisterous atmosphere with the practiced ease of a seasoned diplomat. She laughed at the jokes, traded witty remarks with the Uzumaki elders, and drank her share of sake, all while her sharp eyes missed nothing. She was gathering intelligence, assessing the clan's strength, their temperament, their political leanings, but she did it with a charm so disarming that no one noticed they were being analyzed. She fit in effortlessly, her own senju vitality finding a comfortable resonance with the Uzumaki's life force. Satsuki, on the other hand, was a picture of stoic composure in a sea of cheerful chaos. Seated to Naruto's right, she was a bastion of Uchiha propriety. She politely declined the sake, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. She was out of her element, the loud, emotional displays of the Uzumaki a stark contrast to the controlled, precise world she was used to. Yet, she was not idle. Her Sharingan, hidden behind a mask of polite indifference, was active. She was observing everything, memorizing faces, noting the clan's hierarchy, analyzing the complex Fuinjutsu patterns that adorn the walls of the hall. She saw a young Uzumaki girl trip and scrape her knee, and watched in fascination as the girl's mother simply drew a small seal on the scrape with her finger, causing the wound to close instantly with a faint green glow. The practical, everyday application of such high-level medical ninjutsu was a revelation. "You're very tense, Satsuki-san," Toka noted, leaning past Naruto with a playful grin. "You should try the sake. It's quite good. Might loosen you up." "I am on a diplomatic mission, Toka-sama," Satsuki replied, her voice cool and even. "I must remain vigilant." "Vigilant against what? A surprise drinking contest?" Toka laughed. "This isn't Konoha. These people aren't our rivals. They're our family. Relax." Naruto watched the exchange with a quiet amusement. He saw Satsuki's discomfort, but he also saw her fascination. He leaned over slightly. "They're not as chaotic as they seem," he said softly, for her ears only. "Look at the patterns on the pillars. The ones that look like simple decorations." Satsuki's eyes flickered to the pillars. Her Sharingan's perception shifted, and she saw it. The decorative swirls were not random. They were part of a massive, interlocking barrier formula, one so complex and so perfectly integrated into the architecture that it was virtually invisible. The entire hall was a fortress, a seal of immense power disguised as a banquet room. "Every person in this room," Naruto continued, "has at least a dozen seals on their person. For communication, for defense, for healing. They live and breathe Fuinjutsu. It's not just a weapon to them. It's a part of who they are." Satsuki's eyes widened slightly as she began to truly see the world around her. She saw the intricate seals on the sake barrels that kept the contents perfectly chilled. She saw the subtle glow on the musicians' instruments that amplified their sound. It was a level of artistry and integration she had never conceived of. Her respect for the Uzumaki, and by extension, for Naruto, deepened. Later in the evening, as the festivities grew louder, Toka leaned towards Naruto, her usual playful smirk replaced by a more serious, contemplative expression. "They love you," she said, her voice a low murmur amidst the noise. "Unconditionally. Not because you are a weapon, or a legend, but because you are one of them. It's different." "Yeah," Naruto said, a genuine smile on his face as he watched a group of Uzumaki elders arm wrestling. "It is. In the Senju clan," Toka continued, her gaze distant, "love is often tied to duty. To strength. We love Hashirama because he is our leader, because his power protects us. We respect Tobirama because his intellect guides us. But this is something else. It's a bond that transcends power." She looked at him, her eyes sharp. "That's your true strength, isn't it? The reason you could befriend the Nine Tails. You don't see power as a means to an end. You see connection as the goal itself." Naruto met her gaze, surprised by her insight. She saw him more clearly than almost anyone he had ever known. Before he could respond, Satsuki spoke, her voice still quiet but now holding a new note of curiosity. "You said you traveled to the other Baijuo," she said, looking at him. "You spoke their names. You said you freed some of them. Why?" The question cut through the noise of the hall. It wasn't a political query about military assets. It was a genuine question about his motives. "Because they were lonely," Naruto answered simply. "They were feared, and hunted, and treated like monsters. So they became monsters. I know what that feels like." He looked at his own hand. "I just wanted to give them what I was lucky enough to find. A friend. A choice to be something more." Satsuki was silent for a long moment, her dark eyes studying him. She thought of her own clan's history, of the curse of hatred that was said to plague the Uchiha, a curse born of a deep, passionate love that, when lost, twisted into an equally passionate hatred. She thought of her cousin Madara, of the darkness she sometimes saw flickering in his eyes when he looked at Hashirama. The concept of connection, of loneliness and friendship, resonated with her in a way she had not expected. "I see," she said finally, and for the first time, Her voice held a genuine warmth that had nothing to do with diplomacy. The banquet ended late into the night. As the trio was escorted to the lavish guest quarters prepared for them, they walked in a comfortable silence. The political mission had brought them here, but the shared experience of Uzushio was forging a different kind of alliance between them. They had seen a different way of life, a different kind of strength. And they had seen a new side of Naruto Uzumaki. Not the powerful sage or the confident warrior, but the man who understood loneliness, and who wielded the power of connection as his greatest weapon. And in the quiet heart of the land of whirlpools, surrounded by the echoes of his past, Naruto was finally starting to build a future that was entirely his own. The Scroll of 1,000 Spirals. The day after the banquet, Lord Ashina kept his promise. He found Naruto meditating in the tranquil garden of the guest quarters, a space filled with strangely shaped, luminescent flora that pulsed with a faint chakra. Toka and Satsuki were engaged in a quiet but intense game of Go nearby, their strategic minds finding a new kind of battlefield. "The sea is calm this morning, Naruto," Ashina said, his voice a gentle intrusion. "A good day for clearing away the mists of the past." Naruto opened his eyes and stood. He nodded to his companions, who paused their game, their expressions questioning. "Lord Ashina and I have some family matters to discuss," Naruto explained. "I'll be back later." Toka gave him a look that was equal parts curiosity and warning, a silent reminder of his diplomatic duties. Satsuki merely inclined her head, her gaze sharp and assessing. She knew this was more than a simple chat, it was the true purpose of his visit. Ashina led Naruto not back to the tower, but through a series of winding streets to a part of the village that felt older, more sacred. They arrived before a simple, unadorned stone building that seemed to absorb the light and sound around it. The door was a massive stone slab, covered not with a lock, but with a single, colossal fuinjutsu array, its lines glowing with a soft, silver light. "Only those with the blood of the main Uzumaki line and the knowledge of the key phrase can enter," Ashina explained. He placed his hand on the door and whispered a series of words in a language so ancient Naruto's mind couldn't grasp it, though his soul seemed to understand. The seals flared, and the stone door slid open silently, revealing a dark, descending staircase. "Our history is a heavy thing," Ashina murmured as they descended. "It is filled with great power, and great sorrow. We Uzumaki have always been the guardians of secrets too dangerous for the world. Our fuinjutsu can seal demons, yes, but it can also seal away memories, truths. Even time itself." They entered the vast, circular vault Naruto had seen the night before. The air was still and cool, and the thousands of seals on the walls seemed to hum a silent, powerful song. Ashina led him to the raised dais in the center, where the massive scroll rested, held in place by its glowing chakra chains. "The night of your arrival, years ago," Ashina began, his voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber, "the scroll you see before you trembled. The scroll of our lineage. A new name appeared upon it, a name that should not have existed. And with it, a faint prophecy that had been dormant for centuries began to glow once more." He gestured for Naruto to approach. "I told you that we could feel the echoes of the future. It is a messy, imprecise art. We do not see what will be, but we feel the impact of what must be. Your existence is the greatest paradox our clan has ever known." Naruto stepped forward, his heart pounding, and looked at the scroll. It was just as he remembered, a sprawling, intricate family tree. He saw Ashina's name, and Mito's, connected by a faint line to Hashirama's. He followed the main bloodline down, searching. And then he saw it. The names were faint, like ghosts of ink on the ancient parchment, but they were undeniably there. He saw the name of his great-grandmother, a woman named Tsubaki. Below her, his grandmother, whose name was Akane. And then, his mother. Kushina Uzumaki. Her name was connected by a shimmering golden line to another, a man from outside the clan, Minato Namikaze. And from their union, a single name shone with a brilliant, undeniable light, a fixed point in the flow of time. Naruto Uzumaki. He stared, his breath caught in his throat. It was real. His past, his entire existence, was written here, a future that had already happened, recorded in a past he was now living. "How?" Naruto whispered, his voice hoarse. "We do not know," Ashina confessed. "Our greatest sages have studied the scroll since your name appeared. They believe that your soul, and the soul of the fox within you, are so intertwined with the fate of this world that your journey here did not break the timeline. It fulfilled it. You are not an anomaly that must be corrected. You are the correction." He pointed to a small, almost faded inscription next to Naruto's name. It was written in the same ancient script he had heard earlier. The prophecy of the Namikaze child was always misunderstood by outsiders. It did not just speak of a child who would be born of Senju and Uzumaki blood. It spoke of a child who would unite the spirits of Ashura and Indra, a child who would walk with the Baijuu as equals, and who would hold the key to breaking a cycle of hatred that spanned generations. He looked at Naruto, his ancient eyes filled with a profound respect. It was never about Hashirama or Madara. It was always about you. Naruto felt a weight settle on his shoulders, heavier than any he had ever carried. He was not just preventing a tragic future, he was an active, necessary part of this world's past. His every action was not a ripple, but a stone cast into the river, shaping its flow forever. Why didn't you tell Butsuma or Hashirama? Naruto asked, his mind reeling. Why let them believe I was just some mysterious stranger? Because the truth is a dangerous weapon, my boy, Ashina said gently. To know one's destiny is a terrible burden. Hashirama and Madara needed to find their own path. Your presence, as an outsider, as a friend, was the catalyst they needed. Had they known you were a figure of prophecy from the beginning, they would have treated you as such. Hashirama would have revered you, and Madara would have seen you as an obstacle to his own ambitions from the very start. Their friendship, the bond that is the bedrock of Konoha, would have never formed. He placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Your anonymity was your greatest tool. It allowed you to build bridges of genuine trust. Now your legend can begin. He paused, his expression turning grim. But this knowledge comes with a warning. The scroll shows what is to come, but the ink is not yet dry. The paths are many. I have seen flickers, echoes of other futures for this world. A future where Madara, consumed by his pride, turns against his friend. A future where the villages you see forming turn their power against each other in a series of devastating world wars. A future where this very island, our home, is wiped from the face of the earth, its people scattered, its secrets lost. He looked Naruto directly in the eye, his gaze intense. And a future where a great darkness, an ancient evil, swallows the world whole. Naruto's blood ran cold. He knew exactly what Ashina was talking about. Kaguya. Zetsu. The cycle was not so easily broken. You have changed things, Naruto Uzumaki, Ashina said, his voice a low, powerful rumble. You have given this world a chance it never had. You have built a foundation of hope with Konoha. But the shadows are long, and the old hatreds run deep. Your work is not over. It has only just begun. He led Naruto out of the vault, the great stone door sealing the impossible truths behind them. As they emerged into the bright sunlight, Naruto felt like he had aged 100 years. He now understood his place in this world. He was not just a visitor. He was a cornerstone. And the fate of this timeline, for better or for worse, rested squarely on his shoulders. The knowledge was terrifying, but it was also liberating. The path ahead was no longer shrouded in mist. It was a clear, dangerous, and necessary road. And he would walk it. The dance of seals and blades. The revelation in the vault settled within Naruto, not as a weight, but as an anchor. The last vestiges of his uncertainty, the feeling of being a ghost haunting someone else's story, were gone. He was where he was meant to be. This new sense of purpose radiated from him, a quiet confidence that did not go unnoticed by his companions. He rejoined Toka and Satsuki in the garden. They had finished their game of Go, which, from the triumphant smirk on Toka's face and the subtle frown on Satsuki's, seemed to have ended in a victory for the Senju. You look different, Toka observed, her head cocked as she studied him. The existential dread has been replaced by a disconcerting amount of zen. Did old man Ashina finally tell you the secret to perfect hair? Naruto chuckled, the sound easy and unburdened. Something like that. He just clarified a few things. He looked at the two of them, a new, playful glint in his own eyes. I feel like I've been a terrible host. I've been so caught up in my own head, I haven't shown you the best parts of my family's home. Oh? Satsuki asked, her interest piqued despite her loss at Go. I was under the impression we've seen the highlights. Boisterous parties and self-healing scrapes. You've seen the culture, Naruto corrected. You haven't seen the art. He grinned. The Uzumaki are famous for two things, our red hair and our fuinjutsu. And since I seem to be lacking in one of those departments, I'll have to show you the other. How about a friendly competition? Toka leaned forward, instantly intrigued. A competition? Against you? That seems hardly fair, just Naruto. I'm not competing, Naruto clarified. You two are. Against each other. And against the best Uzushio Gakure has to offer. He led them to a part of the village they hadn't seen yet, a massive open-air arena that looked less like a training ground and more like a colossal, three-dimensional Go board. The floor was a grid of polished stone, and rising from it were pillars and platforms of various heights and sizes, all covered in complex, glowing seals. This is the Spiral Garden, Naruto explained. It's our primary training ground. It's not about overpowering your opponent. It's about outthinking them. He pointed to the seals on the ground and pillars. These are activation arrays. They can do anything from creating a simple clone, to raising a stone wall, to reversing gravity in a specific area. The trick is figuring out which seal does what, and how to use the terrain to your advantage. It's a battle of wits and ninjutsu, not just brute force. As he spoke, a group of Uzumaki shinobi entered the arena. Among them was Kaido, the cheerful man from the docks, and a young woman with fiery red hair tied in a practical, spiky ponytail, her eyes sparkling with competitive fire. Naruto Dono. Kaido boomed. I heard you were looking for a friendly spar. Arashi here was just saying how she was bored of beating all the boys in the village and wanted a real challenge. The woman, Arashi, grinned, cracking her knuckles. Heard Konoha sent their best. Hope you're not all talk, like our Senju cousins. She winked at Toka, a clear, playful challenge. Toka's smirk widened. Oh, you have no idea. The competition was a 2-on-2 team battle, Naruto and Arashi versus Toka and Satsuki. It was a diplomatic gesture, pairing the Konoha representatives together against two Uzumaki. Ready? Naruto asked his partner, Arashi. Born ready, she shot back with a grin. Just try not to get in my way, pretty boy. The match began. It was unlike any battle Toka or Satsuki had ever fought. It was pure, high-speed chaos. Arashi was a whirlwind of motion, leaping from pillar to pillar, slapping seals as she went. A barrage of water dragons would erupt from one side, only to be countered by Satsuki activating a seal that created a wall of fire. Toka, meanwhile, was engaged in a battle of illusions, her genjutsu clashing with seals that created disorienting phantoms and mirror images. Satsuki's Sharingan was pushed to its limits. It could read the seals, yes, but there were thousands of them, and understanding their function in the split second before they were activated was a monumental task. She was forced to abandon her usual precise, reactive style and adopt a more predictive, fluid approach, anticipating Arashi's movements and activating counters before the Uzumaki Kunoichi could even reach her target. Toka found her own skills tested in a new way. Her genjutsu was powerful, but the Uzumaki were notoriously difficult to trap in illusions due to their immense life force and unique chakra. She couldn't simply overpower them. She had to be clever, weaving her illusions into the existing phantoms created by the seals, creating layers of deception that were almost impossible to unravel. Naruto, for his part, played the role of the perfect support. He flowed through the arena, his movements effortless. He wasn't using his overwhelming power. He was using his immense skill. He would appear just in time to block a sneak attack aimed at Arashi with a perfectly formed Rasengan, or use a small-scale wind-style jutsu to subtly alter the trajectory of one of Satsuki's fireballs, allowing Arashi's attack to land. He was a conductor, orchestrating the flow of the battle, subtly guiding his partner and challenging his opponents in equal measure. The climax of the match came when Satsuki and Toka found themselves cornered on a high platform. Arashi had trapped them with a complex barrier seal, and was preparing a massive finishing move. Looks like we win, Arashi grinned, her hands glowing with chakra. Not yet, Toka said, sharing a look with Satsuki. They had spent the entire match on the defensive, reacting to the Uzumaki's home field advantage. It was time to show them what Konoha's finest could do. Satsuki, now, Toka yelled. Satsuki's Mangekyo Sharingan blazed to life. But she didn't cast a powerful genjutsu. Instead, she used its heightened perception to see something no one else could, a flaw. A single, almost microscopic weak point in the barrier seal Arashi had created. There, she shouted. Toka's hands were already moving, her chakra flowing. She didn't target Arashi. She targeted the illusion seals on the pillars around them. Genjutsu release. With a massive pulse of her chakra, she didn't create an illusion, she shattered every single one in the arena. The phantoms, the mirror images, the disorienting lights, they all vanished at once, creating a split second of sensory whiplash for the Uzumaki. In that instant of confusion, Satsuki struck. She didn't use a grand fireball. She channeled her chakra into a single, thin beam of fire, as sharp and as precise as a surgeon's scalpel. It shot across the arena and struck the microscopic flaw in the barrier she had identified. The powerful seal, struck at its weakest point, shattered like glass. The Konoha women were free. But they weren't done. My turn, Toka said with a predatory smile. With the arena cleared of illusory clutter, her own genjutsu was now absolute. She caught Arashi's gaze for a fraction of a second. Demonic illusion, tree-binding death. To Arashi, the world dissolved. She was no longer in the arena, but in a dark forest, bound tightly by a massive, unyielding tree, her own chakra being drained away. In reality, she had simply frozen in place, her eyes wide with a terror only she could see. Naruto landed softly beside her, gently tapping her on the forehead and releasing the genjutsu. Arashi blinked, the illusion shattering, and looked around, her chest heaving. I lost, she breathed, a look of stunned respect on her face. You were amazing, Toka said, walking over with Satsuki. I've never faced a shinobi who could manipulate a battlefield like that. There was a genuine admiration in her voice. And your precision is remarkable, Satsuki added, giving Arashi a respectful nod. To fight with such power and control is the mark of a true master. The four of them stood in the center of the quieted arena, no longer as rivals, but as peers. The competition had started as a challenge, but it had ended as a conversation, a sharing of skills and philosophies. As they left the spiral garden, the sun beginning to set, Toka fell into step beside Naruto. You were holding back, she stated, not as a question, but as a fact. I wasn't the one competing, Naruto replied with a smile. My job was to make sure my partner didn't get too carried away. And to show us something, Toka added, her eyes sharp. That a Senju and an Uchiha, working together, could overcome a challenge neither could face alone. You're a subtle teacher, Naruto Uzumaki. I have no idea what you're talking about, he said, his grin widening. Later that evening, Satsuki found him in the garden again, staring up at the moon. Thank you, she said, her voice soft. For what? For today, she explained. I have always been taught that the Sharingan is our greatest weapon. That its power is in seeing the truth, in predicting and countering our enemies. But today, I learned that it can also be used to find a weakness in a cage. To create an escape. To free an ally. She looked at him, her usual stoic mask replaced by an expression of genuine, open curiosity. You see the world differently than anyone I have ever met, Naruto. You see connections, not just conflicts. I would like to understand that better. Naruto met her gaze, and in the quiet silver light of the moon, he saw not the pride of the Uchiha, but the heart of a woman who was beginning to question the very foundation of her world. The seeds of friendship, and perhaps something more, were beginning to take root, nurtured by the strange, vibrant soil of the land of whirlpools. And the political mission Hashirama and Madara had sent them on was becoming something far deeper, and far more personal, than any of them had anticipated. The weeks in Uzushio Gakure drifted by in a haze of vibrant energy and startling revelations. The initial purpose of the mission, the diplomacy, the strengthening of alliances, was being fulfilled in ways none of them could have anticipated. It was happening not in formal meetings, but in shared meals, in challenging spars, and in the quiet conversations held under the foreign, starry sky. The bond between Toka and Satsuki, once a fragile bridge of professional respect, had solidified into a genuine friendship. They still competed fiercely in their training, but their rivalry was now laced with a mutual admiration. They had learned to appreciate the strengths of their opposing philosophies, finding a powerful synergy in their differences. Naruto, meanwhile, became something of a scholar. He spent his days in the great library tower with Ashina, poring over ancient scrolls of Fuinjutsu. He was not just learning new techniques, he was reconnecting with the very essence of his lineage. The Uzumaki's sealing arts were a language, and he was finally becoming a fluent speaker. He learned seals that could mend broken objects, purify tainted water, and even create temporary pockets of silence. It was an art form as much as a science, a deep and intuitive understanding of the flow of chakra and the fabric of reality. Ashina, for his part, treated Naruto not as a student, but as a peer, a master of a different discipline. They would spend hours debating the theoretical applications of Fuinjutsu, Ashina providing the ancient wisdom, and Naruto providing a radical, forward-thinking perspective that often left the old man chuckling in surprise. His evenings, however, were often spent with his companions. The trio would explore the lively night markets of Uzushio, sampling strange and spicy foods that made Satsuki's eyes water and Toka laugh. They watched street performers who used their chakra to create dazzling displays of light and sound, and listened to old storytellers recount the legends of the Sage of Six Paths. In these moments, they were not the guardian sage, the Senju diplomat, and the Uchiha captain. They were just three friends, experiencing a new corner of the world together. The unspoken political marriage proposals from Hashirama and Madara still hung in the air, a silent undercurrent to their interactions. Naruto was aware of it, as were the two women, but none of them addressed it directly. Instead, a different, more organic connection was forming. One evening, Toka found Naruto on a high cliff overlooking the sea, watching the massive whirlpool spin under the light of the twin moons. She stood beside him, her usual sharp wit softened by the sound of the ocean. "You seem at peace here," she commented, her voice quiet. "I am," Naruto admitted. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not running from something, or towards something. I just am." He looked at her. "You seem different here, too. Less armored." Toka let out a soft, humorless laugh. "An armor is heavy, Naruto. I have been wearing mine for a long time. In the Senju clan, strength is a requirement for survival. Especially for a woman in a position of power. To show any weakness is to invite challenges, from within and without," she sighed, the sound carried away by the sea breeze. "But here, they don't see me as Toka Senju, the Genjutsu master. They just see me as Hashirama's loud aunt. It's refreshing." She turned to him, her expression serious. "When we go back, it won't be the same. The world is changing. I can feel it. The peace we have is a fragile thing." "I know," Naruto said, his gaze returning to the swirling water. "But we'll protect it. Together." Their shared understanding was a comfortable silence, a bond forged not just in battle, but in a mutual weariness of it. His relationship with Satsuki deepened in a different way. It was a quieter connection, built on shared intellect and a mutual fascination with the mechanics of power. She would often seek him out in the library, asking him to explain a complex Fuinjutsu concept he was studying. He, in turn, would ask her about the Sharingan, about the intricate way it allowed her to perceive chakra and deconstruct a jutsu. "Madara believes power is the only way to create a lasting peace," she confided in him one afternoon, as they sat in a secluded corner of the library. "He believes that true strength can force the world into order. For a long time, I believed it too. It is the Uchiha way. Our power is our curse, and our gift. We must master it, or it will master us." "Power is just a tool, Satsuki," Naruto countered gently. "A hammer can be used to build a house or to crush a skull. The tool isn't good or evil. It's the hand that wields it." "And what of your power?" she asked, her gaze intense. "The power of the nine tails, the power of a sage. You could force the world to your will. Why don't you?" "Because a world built on fear isn't a world worth living in," he said simply. "I don't want to be the world's jailer. I want to be its friend." Satsuki looked at him, and for the first time, he saw not just curiosity in her eyes, but a flicker of something deeper. A longing for a world that was not defined by the eternal struggle for power that had plagued her clan for generations. The idyllic weeks turned into a month, then two. Their diplomatic mission was a resounding success. The bond between Konoha and Uzushio was no longer just a political alliance, it was a genuine friendship, cemented by the mutual respect between their strongest shinobi. Naruto felt a sense of belonging he had never known, and in the process, he had grown closer to the two women who had accompanied him than he ever thought possible. The end came, as it always does, without warning. They were in the spiral garden, enjoying one last friendly spar before their planned departure the next day. The mood was light, filled with the easy banter of comrades. Naruto was effortlessly deflecting a combined assault from the three women, Toka, Satsuki, and a determined Arashi, when he suddenly froze. His head snapped up, his sage senses screaming a warning. "What is it?" Toka asked, her playful expression vanishing, replaced by the sharp focus of a warrior. Before Naruto could answer, a hawk, its feathers ragged, its movements frantic with exhaustion, spiraled down from the sky. It was a Konoha messenger bird, and it was flying as if its life depended on it. It collapsed on the stone floor of the arena, a single, mud-splattered scroll tied to its leg. Naruto was across the arena in a flash of yellow light, his hand gently untying the scroll. The seal was Hashirama's. He broke it, his heart pounding a sudden, heavy rhythm against his ribs. The message was short, the calligraphy hurried and desperate. "Naruto. They have moved. The cloud, the stone, the mist, and the sand. An allied shinobi force. Their spies confirmed you were gone. They have declared war. They are not attacking the village directly. They have struck at our heart. They have taken Mito. Come home." The scroll fell from Naruto's trembling fingers. The world seemed to fall silent, the cheerful sounds of Uzushio fading into a distant, meaningless hum. The peace was over. The war had begun. And they had started it by taking his family. Chapter 9. The Sage's Fury. The silence that fell over the spiral garden was absolute. The playful energy of the spar evaporated, replaced by a sudden, chilling tension that was colder than any genjutsu. Arashi and the other Uzumaki shinobi took an involuntary step back, not from a physical threat, but from the sheer, overwhelming pressure that had just erupted from Naruto. The air around him seemed to warp, the light dimming as his chakra, usually a warm and welcoming sun, became a raging, focused inferno. His face, moments before filled with easy laughter, was now a mask of cold, terrifying fury. His blue eyes, which had held the wisdom of a sage, now burned with the righteous fire of a vengeful god. Toka and Satsuki were at his side in an instant, their own expressions grim. They had seen him in battle, had witnessed his power, but this was different. This was not the controlled strength of a warrior. This was the raw, unrestrained rage of a man whose family had been threatened. "Naruto, what is it?" Satsuki asked, her voice low and steady, her Sharingan already active as she scanned their surroundings for an unseen threat. Naruto didn't answer immediately. He bent down and picked up the fallen scroll, his hand trembling almost imperceptibly. He held it out for them to see. Toka took it, her eyes quickly scanning the desperate scrawl. Her face paled, her usual confident smirk vanishing, replaced by a look of pure, cold fury that mirrored Naruto's own. "Mito," she whispered, her voice a low growl. "They took Mito." She passed the scroll to Satsuki, whose eyes widened in disbelief as she read the message. An attack on the Hokage's wife, a high-ranking Uzumaki princess, was not just an act of war, it was a calculated, personal insult designed to provoke an overwhelming response. It was a declaration that the time for politics was over. "An allied shinobi force," Satsuki murmured, her mind already dissecting the strategic implications. "They waited for you to leave. They saw your departure as an opportunity, a sign of weakness. They made a mistake," Naruto said, his voice dangerously quiet. The ground around his feet began to crack, a testament to the immense power he was struggling to contain. "They think my absence is their strength. I'm about to teach them that my presence is their annihilation." He turned to his companions, his gaze sharp and commanding. The easygoing friend was gone, replaced by the guardian sage of Konoha, a being who held the fate of nations in his hands. "Our mission has changed," he stated, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Toka, Satsuki, your new orders are to remain here, in Uzushio Gakure. This is no longer a simple diplomatic visit. It is now the most important embassy in the world." Toka's eyes narrowed. "Naruto, you can't be serious. We are coming with you. Mito is my family. Konoha is my home. And that is precisely why you must stay," Naruto countered, his logic as sharp and as cold as a blade. "The enemy has declared war. Uzushio is now Konoha's most vital ally. We need their fuinjutsu, their resources, their shinobi. You two are the highest-ranking Konoha representatives here. You will work with Lord Ashina. You will coordinate our joint war effort. You will open a supply line, establish communication protocols, and prepare the Uzumaki forces for deployment. That is an S-rank mission of the highest priority. It is a task only you can handle." Satsuki, her mind processing the strategic brilliance of his plan, gave a slow, reluctant nod. "He is right, Toka. Our place is here. We can do more for the war effort by securing this alliance than we could as two more blades on the battlefield." She looked at Naruto, a new understanding in her eyes. He wasn't sidelining them. He was trusting them with a responsibility equal to his own. Toka's fists clenched, her pride warring with her duty. But she saw the undeniable logic in Naruto's words. She looked at his face, at the cold, hard resolve in his eyes, and knew that arguing was pointless. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "But you had better bring her back, Naruto. You bring my family home." "I will," Naruto promised, his voice a low, dangerous vow. Without another word, the trio moved, a blur of motion as they raced towards the central tower. They found Ashina in the main council chamber, already surrounded by his top commanders. The old Uzukage looked up as they entered, his expression grim. The exhausted messenger hawk had already found its way to him. "Lord Ashina," Naruto said, his tone formal but filled with an urgent energy. "You have seen the message." "I have," Ashina replied, his voice a low rumble of ancient, controlled fury. The air in the room crackled with the combined power of the two Uzumaki. "They have taken my grandniece. They have declared war on our family. They have forgotten the fury of the whirlpools." He turned to his commanders. "Mobilize the fleet. Prepare every shinobi for battle. Konoha has our full support. We sail on the next tide." "Thank you, Lord Ashina," Naruto said with a respectful bow. He then turned to Toka and Satsuki. "I'm leaving you in charge here. You have the authority of the Hokage behind you. Coordinate with Lord Ashina. I will handle the rescue." He walked to the center of the room, the swirling Uzumaki crest on the floor glowing faintly under his feet. He pulled a unique, three-pronged kunai from a pouch on his belt, a blade his companions had never seen before. "Naruto, Wait, Satsuki said, her voice holding a note of concern. Even at your speed, it will take you days to get back by sea. I'm not taking a boat, Naruto said, his expression unreadable. He knelt down and drove the special kunai deep into the stone floor, the metal ringing with a strange, final clarity. The kunai was now a permanent fixture in the heart of Uzushio Gakure. What is that? Toka asked, her eyes narrowed as she studied the strange weapon. Naruto stood up, placing one hand on the hilt of the embedded kunai. He looked at his companions, at the Uzumaki warriors who were his family, and gave them a single, determined nod. A promise, he said. A promise that our homes will always be connected. He took a deep breath, and the world around him seemed to twist. In the Hokage's office in Konoha, the atmosphere was one of controlled panic. Hashirama was pacing like a caged tiger, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. Madara stood by the window, his arms crossed, his mangekyo staring out at the horizon with a cold, murderous intensity. Tobirama was at the central map, barking orders to the communication core, his mind a whirlwind of tactical calculations. Where are they holding her? Hashirama demanded for the 10th time. What are their demands? We don't know, brother, Tobirama replied, his voice tight with frustration. Our sensor teams are trying to find her chakra signature, but it is being masked. The Allied forces are not marching on Konoha. This is a hostage situation, designed to draw us out, to force us onto a battlefield of their choosing. A cowardly tactic, Madara growled. They know they cannot face us head on. Suddenly, the air in the center of the room shimmered. It twisted, it warped, and with a sound like tearing silk, a flash of brilliant yellow light erupted, blinding everyone for a fraction of a second. When their vision cleared, Naruto stood there. His cloak was gone, his clothes were simple traveler's garb, and the scent of sea salt and ozone clung to him like a second skin. His face was a mask of cold, righteous fury. The room fell into a stunned, absolute silence. Hashirama froze mid-pace, his jaw slack. Madara's mangekyo widened in disbelief. But it was Tobirama who had the most profound reaction. His scientific mind, his understanding of the laws of chakra and space-time, shattered into a million pieces. He recognized the chakra signature of the technique. It was his. The flying thunder god. But the scale of it. The sheer, impossible distance. Uzushio Gakure was on the other side of the world, a journey of weeks by sea. To traverse that distance in an instant. It was not just a mastery of his jutsu. It was a violation of the very principles upon which it was built. It was impossible. Naruto. Hashirama breathed, his voice filled with a desperate, dawning hope. Naruto's gaze met his friend's. I came as soon as I heard. He looked at the 3 men who had founded this village with him. Where is my family? The First Shinobi World War. The question hung in the air, simple, direct, and heavier than any jutsu. Where is my family? The word family struck a chord deeper than ally or Hokage's wife. It was a declaration of profound, personal investment, and it shifted the dynamic in the room from one of panic strategy to one of focused, righteous anger. Hashirama, who had been a storm of unfocused grief, found his anchor. He stopped pacing, his gaze locking with Naruto's. The despair in his eyes was replaced by a flicker of his old, unwavering resolve. Naruto. We don't know. They're masking her chakra. Our best sensors can't get a lock. The Allied forces are camped in the Land of Frost, a neutral territory. They're daring us to make a move. It's a trap, obviously, Tobirama stated, his voice still holding a note of disbelief as he stared at Naruto, his mind unable to reconcile the man's impossible arrival with the laws of physics. He forced himself back to the tactical situation. The Land of Frost is a mountainous, treacherous terrain. They want to lure our main army into a series of ambushes, to bleed us dry while they hold Mito as leverage. A frontal assault is suicide. Then we will not give them a frontal assault, Madara said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. He pushed himself off from the window, his Mangekyo Sharingan swirling with a cold, predatory light. We will give them an execution. I will take the Uchiha's finest. We will descend upon them like a fire from heaven. We will burn the mountains to glass and retrieve her from the ashes. And you will fall right into their second trap. Tobirama shot back, his composure returning. They will be expecting you, Madara. They know your tactics. They will have water and earth-style users waiting to counter your fire. This requires subtlety, not a bonfire. Enough. Naruto's voice wasn't a shout, but it cracked through the room with the force of a thunderclap, silencing the 3 most powerful men in the village. The pressure of his chakra, which he had been reining in, pulsed outwards for a fraction of a second, a silent, undeniable assertion of command. You are all thinking like clan leaders, Naruto said, his gaze sweeping over each of them. Hashirama, you are letting your heart cloud your judgment. Madara, you are letting your pride demand a battle. And Tobirama, you are letting logic paralyze you into inaction. You are all correct, and you are all wrong. He walked to the central map, the scent of the sea still clinging to him. This is not a clan war. This is the first Shinobi World War. And we will not win it by playing by their rules. He looked at Hashirama. We will get her back. I promise you. He then turned to Madara. But not by burning the world down. We built this village to end that cycle, not to perfect it. Finally, he looked at Tobirama. And you are right, this requires a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. But our scalpel is sharper than any they can imagine. He placed a hand on the map. They have taken one person to lure an army. We will not send an army. We will send 4 people. The implication hung in the air. The 4 of them. A 4-man squad? Tobirama asked, his skepticism returning. Against the combined forces of 4 nations? The odds are astronomical. The odds are irrelevant when you can rewrite the equation, Naruto countered. He looked at Tobirama, a knowing glint in his eye. You're wondering about my jutsu, aren't you? How I got here so fast? Tobirama's eyes narrowed. I am curious about the theoretical principles of such a long-range, instantaneous technique. It's a beautiful jutsu, Tobirama, Naruto said, his voice holding a genuine admiration that caught the Senju prodigy off guard. Your masterpiece. The Flying Thunder God. A technique that connects space through sealed formulas. He tapped the map. I have spent the last 6 years not just traveling, but leaving my mark. I have left my seals in every corner of this world. In the deserts of the sand, in the mists of the water, in the mountains of the stone and the cloud. I left one with the Raikage himself during the summit, a little gift on the back of his cloak. A collective, stunned silence filled the room. The strategic implications of what Naruto had just said were world-altering. He hadn't just built bridges of diplomacy, he had built a network of instantaneous transport that connected him to every major power in the world. They think they have us trapped, Naruto continued, his voice now a low, dangerous hum. They think we are separated by weeks of travel. They are wrong. We are separated by a single thought. He looked at his friends, his brothers in this strange, new timeline. Here is the plan. Hashirama, Madara, you will mobilize the army. Not for an attack, but for a feint. You will march them north, slowly. Make a show of it. Draw their attention, make them believe we are taking their bait. Tobirama, you and your sensor corps will be our eyes and ears. You will coordinate with Uzushio. Toka and Satsuki are already preparing them for war. I want you to find the exact location where they are holding Mito. Pinpoint it. I don't care what kind of suppression seals they are using. Find a flicker, an echo, anything. And what will you be doing? Madara asked, his arms crossed, his pride demanding to know his own role in this grand strategy. Me? Naruto's lips curved into a cold, hard smile. I'm going to pay a visit to some old acquaintances. He closed his eyes, and the air around him shimmered again. When he vanished in a flash of yellow, he was gone for only a second. He reappeared in the same spot, but now he held a struggling, terrified shinobi in his grip, a man wearing the headband of the village hidden in the stone. This is one of their forward scouts, Naruto said calmly, ignoring the shocked gasps from the others. He was camped 10 miles from our border. I convinced him to tell me where their command post is. He let the man drop to the floor, where he was immediately seized by the Hokage's guards. Their main force is gathered at a fortress in the land of frost called the Citadel of the Unseen, Naruto announced. That is where they are holding Mito. And that is where the 4 kage are meeting. He looked at Hashirama, Madara, and Tobirama. The feint is over. The time for subtlety is done. We are going to hit them at their heart. All 4 of us. We will retrieve Mito, and we will end this war before it truly begins. He held out his hand. Tobirama, your jutsu is the key. But it requires physical contact to transport others. Hashirama, Madara, take my hand. Hashirama, his face a mask of fierce determination, immediately placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Madara hesitated for a fraction of a second, his pride warring with the undeniable logic and power of the man before him. He then gave a curt nod and placed his hand on Naruto's other shoulder. Naruto looked at Tobirama. Ready to see what your creation can really do? Tobirama stared, his mind racing. This was it. The ultimate test of his theories, a leap into the unknown that defied all logic. He stepped forward and placed his hand on Naruto's back. Let's go get our family back, Naruto said. And with a final, brilliant flash of yellow light that seemed to tear a hole in reality itself, the four most powerful shinobi in the world vanished from the Hokage's office, leaving behind only the scent of ozone and the stunned silence of those who had just witnessed the impossible. The First Shinobi World War had begun, not with the march of armies, but with the teleportation of gods. The Citadel of the Unseen. The world dissolved into a nauseating, dimensionless vortex of yellow light. For Hashirama and Madara, the sensation was utterly disorienting, a feeling of being unmade and remade in the space of a heartbeat. When reality snapped back into focus, the familiar scent of wood and ink from the Hokage's office was gone, replaced by the biting, sterile cold of a blizzard. They stood on a high, snow-blasted peak, the wind howling around them like a hungry beast. In the distance, nestled between two jagged mountains, was a massive, grim fortress made of black stone, its walls seeming to absorb the light from the gray, overcast sky. The Citadel of the Unseen. Tobirama stumbled, his hand flying to his head as he fought a wave of vertigo. His scientific mind was in revolt. The chakra expenditure. The spatial displacement. It's impossible, he muttered, his voice filled with a mixture of horror and pure, unadulterated scientific awe. The formulas. They shouldn't be able to handle that distance. Formulas are just a language, Tobirama, Naruto said calmly, his feet planted firmly on the snowy ground, his body perfectly stable. He was the anchor in their storm. You wrote the grammar. I just learned to write poetry with it. He turned his gaze to the fortress. They know we're here. He was right. The moment they had arrived, a wave of chakra had pulsed from the citadel, a massive scale sensory net. Alarms, silent and chakra-based, would be screaming through the fortress. The trap had been sprung. They expected an army, Madara observed, his mangekyo already scanning the fortress, dissecting its defenses. They did not expect the four of us to appear on their doorstep. It doesn't matter, Hashirama said, his voice a low rumble of controlled power. He entered sage mode, the markings appearing on his face. They have my wife. They will not have her for long. Hold, Naruto commanded, putting a hand on his friend's shoulder. We still do this my way. A scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Their greatest strength is their numbers. Their greatest weakness is their leadership. The four Kage are in that fortress, congratulating themselves on their brilliant plan. We are going to walk into their throne room and dismantle their war before it begins. He closed his eyes, his own sage senses expanding, merging with the natural energy of the mountain. He saw the fortress not as a structure of stone, but as a web of chakra. He saw the thousands of shinobi moving within, the patrol routes, the guard posts, the hidden traps. And he saw a single, warm, fiercely defiant flame of Uzumaki chakra, suppressed by powerful seals, deep in the heart of the citadel. Mito. She's in the central keep, Naruto announced, his eyes snapping open. The Kage are with her. They're using her as a battery, trying to analyze her fuinjutsu. Fools. He looked at his companions. The fortress is a maze, designed to funnel an army into kill zones. But we are not an army. He pointed to a small, unassuming ventilation shaft high up on the fortress wall, barely visible through the swirling snow. Tobirama, you and I will go in through there. We'll disable their internal sensory network and clear a path. Hashirama, Madara, you are the hammer. You will create a diversion at the main gate. A big one. Draw their attention. Make them think the full might of Konoha has arrived. But do not engage their main force. Distract, do not destroy. Buy us time. Madara grinned, a feral, dangerous expression. A diversion? I think I can manage that. He shared a look with Hashirama, a perfect, unspoken understanding passing between the two old rivals. Be careful, Naruto, Hashirama said, his expression serious. We will give you your opening. With a nod, Hashirama and Madara leapt from the peak, two gods of the battlefield descending towards the fortress below. The diversion was not subtle. It was a declaration. Hashirama landed before the main gate and clapped his hands together. Sage art would release, true several thousand hands. The very mountain seemed to groan as a colossal, multi-armed wooden statue, larger than any Baijuu, erupted from the snowy ground. Its sheer scale was an act of psychological warfare, a sight so impossible it defied belief. The statue's 1,000 fists began to rain down upon the outer walls of the fortress, each blow shaking the foundations of the citadel. At the same time, Madara landed on the opposite side. Perfect Susanoo, he whispered, and a titanic, ethereal samurai of pure, violet chakra materialized around him, its armored form radiating an aura of absolute, terrifying power. It drew its massive katana and, with a single, elegant slash, cleaved the top half of a watchtower from its base. The combined assault sent the allied shinobi forces into a frenzy. They had expected a siege, a slow advance. They had not expected two godlike monsters to appear at their gates and begin dismantling their fortress. The bulk of their army surged towards the main gate, a chaotic wave of jutsu crashing harmlessly against the wooden fists and the ethereal armor. While the chaos raged outside, Naruto and Tobirama moved like ghosts inside. They slipped through the ventilation shaft and into the cold, dark corridors of the Citadel. Their sensory net is based on a series of chakra-infused metal threads woven into the walls, Tobirama whispered, his own sensor abilities on high alert. Crude, but effective against a large force. I can disrupt them, but it will be temporary. All we need is a window, Naruto replied. They moved with a silent, deadly purpose. They were a perfect team. Tobirama's analytical mind would identify the patrol routes and the weak points in the guard rotations, while Naruto's sage senses would detect the hidden traps and the life signs of the guards themselves. They flowed through the fortress, a whisper of death in the shadows. A stone shinobi would turn a corner and suddenly find himself face to face with Tobirama, whose hand would lash out in a precise chop to the neck, the man slumping to the ground before he could even make a sound. A cloud shinobi, hidden in the rafters, would prepare to sound an alarm, only to be enveloped by a single, perfectly formed Rasengan from Naruto, the silent, grinding force erasing him from existence without a sound. They were a scalpel, and they were cutting their way to the heart of the enemy. As they moved deeper, Tobirama's initial shock at Naruto's abilities was replaced by a growing, grudging respect. He watched Naruto dismantle a complex pressure plate trap by using a minuscule wind current to lift the plate just enough to disable it, a feat of chakra control he had never thought possible. He saw Naruto detect a genjutsu trap woven into the very air, a technique even a Sharingan might miss, and dispel it with a simple pulse of sage chakra. Your skills. Tobirama admitted, his voice a low murmur as they paused in a darkened alcove. They are not just powerful. They are refined. Beyond anything I have ever theorized. You learn a lot when you spend 6 years talking to ancient turtles and grumpy monkeys, Naruto replied with a slight grin, his senses still stretched out. We're close. She's just beyond this corridor. In the throne room. They reached a pair of massive, iron-bound doors. Naruto could feel the 5 powerful chakra signatures within, the 4 kage, and Mito. Her chakra was suppressed, bound by powerful seals, but her Uzumaki life force was a defiant, burning flame. Hashirama and Madara have drawn the bulk of their forces, Tobirama reported, sensing the flow of the battle outside. But the cage's personal guards are still inside. At least 20 elite jonin. They won't be a problem, Naruto said. He looked at Tobirama. Ready to make an entrance? Tobirama nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The scientist in him was still reeling, but the shinobi in him was ready. Naruto placed a hand on the massive door. He didn't push. He simply let a sliver of his chakra flow into it, tracing the intricate locking mechanism within. It was a complex, powerful seal. A masterpiece of the Sans engineering. It took him less than a second to understand it. And to break it. With a soft click that was lost in the distant roar of the battle outside, the massive iron lock disengaged. Naruto pushed the doors open. The scene within was exactly as he had sensed. The 4 kage stood around a raised platform where Mito Uzumaki was bound by glowing, chakra-suppressing chains. Her fiery red hair was disheveled, but her eyes burned with a defiant fire. The cage turned, their expressions of smug satisfaction turning to ones of pure, unadulterated shock as Naruto and Tobirama stepped into the room. Impossible. The Tsuchikage, Ishikawa, gasped. The alarms. The guards. They're taking a nap, Naruto said, his voice dangerously calm. He let his gaze fall on the chains binding Mito, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop by 20 degrees. That, he said, his voice a low, deadly promise, is my family you have chained up like an animal. The First Shinobi World War was about to end in a single room, deep in the heart of a frozen fortress. And the 4 kage were about to learn the true meaning of the title, Guardian Sage of Konoha. The unraveling. The throne room of the Citadel was a study in grim, martial power. The walls were unadorned black stone, the air was frigid, and the only light came from torches that cast long, dancing shadows. In the center of this oppressive chamber, the 4 most powerful leaders in the world, the cage of the newly formed great nations, stood frozen in a state of collective, absolute shock. Their perfect trap, their masterstroke of political and military strategy, had been undone by 2 men who had simply appeared. The first Raikage, a man whose entire being radiated an aura of aggressive, lightning-fast power, was the first to recover. His shock curdled into pure rage. He He bellowed, his voice a thunderclap that echoed off the stone walls. How did you get in here? No matter. You have walked into your own tomb. He erupted in an aura of blue lightning, his signature lightning release armor flaring to life. Elite guard. To me. Kill them. From the shadows around the throne room, 20 elite jonin, the personal bodyguards of the cage, flickered into existence. There were stone-armored shinobi from Iwa, mist-shrouded assassins from Kiri, swift cloud nin, and cunning puppeteers from Suna. It was a collection of S-rank threats, each a legend in their own right. They moved as one, a wave of killing intent aimed at the two intruders. Tobirama Senju met them head-on. He drew his sword, its blade humming with a faint blue light. Go, Naruto, he said, his voice cold and calm. Mito is the priority. I will handle the rabble. What followed was not a battle, it was a clinical, terrifyingly efficient dissection. Tobirama, the scientist, the inventor, was also one of the most lethal shinobi of his generation. He moved with a speed that seemed to defy physics, a blur of blue and silver. His sword was an extension of his will, a tool of precise, instant death. He parried a massive stone fist from an Iwa nin, his blade not just blocking but finding the microscopic fissures in the rock jutsu, shattering it with a precise application of force. He sidestepped a cloud nin's lightning-fast lunge and, in a single fluid motion, opened a gash in the man's throat. He was a whirlwind of water and steel, his water-style jutsu forming whips, needles, and dragons that flowed around the attacks of his opponents, turning their own elemental techniques against them. He was outnumbered 20-1, and he was winning. While Tobirama engaged the guards, Naruto walked forward, his steps slow and deliberate, his gaze never leaving the cage. The air around him grew heavy, the pressure of his chakra so immense that the cage felt a primal, instinctual fear grip them. It was the fear a mouse feels in the presence of a hawk. You made two mistakes, Naruto said, his voice quiet but carrying over the sounds of Tobirama's battle. Your first was thinking that Konoha's strength was just in its numbers. You saw our army, and you planned for it. You didn't plan for its soul. He took another step. The stone floor beneath his feet began to crack under the sheer pressure of his will. Your second mistake, he continued, his eyes locking onto the chains binding Mito, was that you laid your hands on my family. He raised a hand, and the adamantine sealing chains, a technique unique to the Uzumaki, erupted from his own body. But these were not the simple chains he had used on the gold and silver brothers. These were thick, complex, and glowed with the golden light of the Nine Tails chakra. They were not just a sealing jutsu, they were a declaration of his lineage, of his power. The chains shot forward, not at the cage, but at the seals holding Mito captive. The cage, seeing the attack, reacted instantly. Earth-style, mud wall. The Tsuchikage, Ishikawa, yelled, slamming his hands on the ground. A thick wall of stone erupted to block the chains. The chains did not stop. They didn't even slow down. They phased through the stone wall as if it were a ghost, a property of the Uzumaki's ultimate sealing art. They touched the chakra-suppressing chains on Mito, and with a brilliant flash of light, the complex seals that had been designed to hold a Jinchuriki simply unraveled. The foreign chakra was not overpowered, it was deconstructed, its formula understood and then undone in an instant. Mito Uzumaki fell to her knees, gasping as her own powerful chakra flooded back into her system. She looked up at Naruto, her eyes wide with a mixture of gratitude and awe. The cage stared in stunned disbelief. The seals, which had taken their combined Fuinjutsu experts weeks to design, had been broken in less than a second by a single jutsu. The sheer gap in their understanding of the sealing arts was a chasm so wide it was demoralizing. Now, Naruto said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper as he took another step forward. Let's talk about the terms of your surrender. The Raikage, his pride wounded, let out a roar of fury. Surrender? To you? Never. He shot forward, a bolt of pure lightning, his fist aimed at Naruto's heart. It was his fastest attack, the Liger Bomb, a jutsu that had killed dozens of powerful shinobi. He never reached his target. A golden, spectral ribcage erupted around Naruto, and a massive, skeletal hand caught the Raikage's fist, stopping it dead. The shockwave from the impact cracked the very walls of the throne room. The Raikage stared in horror at the golden hand, then up at Naruto, who hadn't even flinched. From behind Naruto, the spectral form grew, coalescing into the full, majestic form of Kurama, a titanic beast of pure golden chakra, its 9 tails lashing out and filling the entire throne room. Its massive, slitted eyes, burning with an ancient, intelligent fury, stared down at the cage. You dare, Kurama's voice boomed, not just in their minds, but in reality itself, a sound that shook the very foundations of their souls, to threaten my partner? The four kage, the most powerful men in their respective nations, were paralyzed. They were not just facing a Jinchuriki. They were facing a Baijuu that was not a prisoner, but a willing, furious ally. The balance of power they had sought to create had just been rendered utterly, completely meaningless. They had brought 1,000 shinobi to fight a village. And the village had sent a god. At that moment, the wall behind the throne exploded inwards in a shower of rock and snow. Hashirama and Madara stepped through the breach, their own powerful auras washing over the room. Hashirama's sage mode gave him an air of primal authority, while Madara's perfect Susanoo, visible through the hole in the wall, loomed over the fortress like a purple god of death. The four kage looked from the two shinobi gods at the door, to the two shinobi gods who had just entered, and finally at the bound and defeated forms of their elite guards, all dispatched by a single man. The fight was over. The war was over. And they hadn't managed to land a single blow. Hashirama looked at the defeated kage, his expression not of triumph, but of deep, profound disappointment. Was it worth it? He asked, his voice heavy with the weight of their betrayal. All of this? For what? For fear? For pride? The kage had no answer. They had gambled everything on the assumption that Konoha, without its guardian sage, would be vulnerable. They had gambled that they could control the narrative, force a negotiation, and seize power. They had gambled, and they had lost in the most absolute way imaginable. Naruto let the Kurama avatar fade, the golden light receding back into him. He walked over to Mito and gently helped her to her feet. "Are you all right?" "I am now," she said, her voice filled with a strength that defied her capture. She looked at him, then at her husband, and a small, proud smile touched her lips. Naruto turned back to the defeated kage. "This war is over," he stated, his voice calm, but with an authority that was absolute. "You will return to your villages. You will tell your people that the age of conflict is done. Konoha does not seek to conquer you. We seek to partner with you. The offer I made at the summit still stands. We will help you. We will teach you. But know this." His gaze swept over each of them, his blue eyes as hard as diamonds. "If you ever threaten my home or my family again, I will not send a diplomat. I will not send a kage. I will come myself. And I will burn your villages to the ground." The threat was not a boast. It was a promise. A promise from a man who had just proven he had the power to keep it. The First Shinobi World War had ended not with a treaty, but with a lesson. A lesson that the world would not soon forget. The sage's peace. The return to Konoha was as swift and as reality-bending as the departure. One moment, the five of them stood amidst the shattered throne room of a defeated enemy fortress. The next, they were back in the familiar, warm wood of the Hokage's office. The four kage were left in the frozen wasteland of their failed ambitions, with Naruto's final, chilling promise echoing in their ears. They had been given not terms of surrender, but a new, undeniable reality to accept. The news of their victory, delivered by Tobarama's swift messenger birds, had already reached the village. When the five of them emerged from the Hokage tower, they were met not with the panicked anxiety of a village at war, but with a wave of pure, unadulterated joy and relief. The streets were filled with cheering shinobi and civilians, their faces alight with a pride that transcended clan lines. They cheered for Hashirama, their beloved Hokage. They cheered for Madara, their fearsome protector. They cheered for Tobarama, their brilliant strategist. They cheered for Mito, their returned princess. But the loudest cheers, the ones that shook the very leaves on the trees, were for Naruto. He was no longer just the guardian sage, a figure of myth and legend. He was their shield, their ultimate guarantor of peace. The man who had crossed the world in an instant to defend them. He was, in that moment, the living embodiment of the will of fire. In the days that followed, the world began to react. Envoys from the other four great nations arrived in Konoha, not with demands, but with humble requests for talks. The Battle of the Citadel, as it came to be known, had become an instant legend, a story told in hushed, awed tones in every corner of the shinobi world. The tale of how the four leaders of Konoha had single-handedly dismantled the entire allied shinobi forces without suffering a single casualty was a display of power so absolute it had redrawn the map of the world. The age of warring states was definitively over. The age of Konoha had begun. The peace, however, brought its own challenges. In the quiet of the Hokage's office, the four founders gathered once more, the weight of their new reality settling upon them. "They are afraid of us," Hashirama said, his voice heavy as he looked over the diplomatic requests from the other kage. "We have achieved peace, but it is a peace born of fear. This is not the world I dreamed of." "It is the only world that is possible, brother," Tobarama countered, his expression a mixture of pragmatism and a new, deep-seated curiosity as he looked at Naruto. A true balance of power is a fantasy. There will always be one who is stronger. Our victory has simply established, beyond any doubt, who that is. It is our responsibility to wield that strength with wisdom. His gaze lingered on Naruto. A strength I am still struggling to comprehend. The principles of your Hiraishin. They defy my own understanding of space-time. It's all about the formula, Togurama, Naruto said with a cool smile, enjoying the rare sight of the unflappable Senju being so thoroughly intellectually stumped. Maybe I'll show you the math sometime. Madara, who had been silent, finally spoke, his arms crossed as he stared out the window. Fear is a tool, Hashirama. A necessary one. It is the fear of our power that will keep the other nations in line, that will prevent them from trying a stunt like this again. He turned, his mangekyo locking onto Naruto. Your power has given us this peace. We must now ensure it is maintained. There was a new light in his eyes, a cold, hard pragmatism that had replaced his youthful fire. He had seen a power greater than his own, and while he respected it, a part of him also coveted it. The seeds of his own ambition, though dormant, had been watered by the display at the Citadel. Naruto watched them, a sense of melancholy settling over him. He had won the war, but the struggle for true peace, the one fought in the hearts of men, was far from over. Later that week, he was summoned to Uzushio. He used the Hiraishin kunai he had left there, appearing in the council chamber in a flash of yellow, much to the shock and delight of the Uzumaki elders. Toka and Satsuki were waiting for him, their mission as Konoha's ambassadors having been a resounding success. The Uzumaki had pledged their full, unwavering support to Konoha, their fleets and their Fuinjutsu masters now at the Leaf's disposal. The reunion with his two companions was different from the one with his male friends. The life or death tension was gone, replaced by a comfortable, easy familiarity. So, Toka began, a playful smirk on her face as they walked through the vibrant streets of Uzushio. I hear you ended a world war while we were stuck here playing diplomat. You could have at least sent an invitation. It was a last-minute thing, Naruto replied with a grin. You two had the more important job. Securing the peace is harder than winning the war. Satsuki walked beside them, her usual stoic expression softened by a hint of a smile. The Uzumaki are impressive, she admitted. Their knowledge of Fuinjutsu is a strategic asset beyond measure. Lord Ashina has agreed to a cultural exchange program. Our two villages will share knowledge, techniques, and people. Her eyes flickered towards Naruto for a fraction of a second, the unspoken implication of Madara's proposal hanging in the air. That evening, the three of them sat on the same cliff overlooking the sea, the whirlpools swirling below them in a hypnotic dance. The political pretense of their journey was over. They were simply three comrades, three friends, who had shared an extraordinary experience. So what now, guardian sage? Toka asked, her voice softer than usual. The world is at peace. The village is safe. What does a man who can end a war by himself do on his day off? Naruto looked out at the endless ocean, a thoughtful expression on his face. I don't know, he admitted honestly. For the first time in a long time. I don't have a mission. I don't have a battle to fight. He thought of Hashirama's words, of Madara's proposal. He looked at the two incredible women beside him, a Senju and an Uchiha who had become friends, who had become his friends. He had spent so long trying to fix the past, to secure the future, that he had never really considered his own. Maybe, he said, a slow, genuine smile spreading across his face, I'll finally have time to figure that out. The political marriages could wait. The future of the world, for the first time, felt stable. In this quiet moment, suspended between a war that had ended and a future that was yet to be written, Naruto Uzumaki, the man from another time, was finally, truly home. And as he sat there, flanked by a fiery Senju and a brilliant Uchiha, he realized that perhaps, after all this time, he wasn't so alone after all. But deep in the archives of Konoha, in the darkest corner of the Naka shrine, a single stone tablet waited. It held an ancient story, a story of a cursed hatred, of a moon's eye, and of a darkness that was far older and far more patient than any kage or baijuu. The war was over, but the true enemy had not yet made its move. And it was waiting, as it always had, for the perfect moment to turn the world's newfound hope into its ultimate despair. Alright guys, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. As always, the rest of the story is already out over on Patreon, link to that will be in the description. Anyways, until next time, peace.